Hey guys, welcome back to Vinceville Custom. So today we're going to do a work in progress series for this statue. This is going to be for 2026, and the goal with this work in progress series is I'm going to try and actually get the figure pretty much mostly done before I start posting the videos. A lot of my other work in progress videos were going good, but I had a lot of emergencies with my elderly parents and things always were getting delayed. So I figured, let me do a work in progress series. Let me take my time, not rush it out to kind of get it on YouTube right away. And then when the thing is almost done, I could start posting the videos, and then it kind of will work out better that way. So that's kind of the goal. So it's January 2026. I'm going to start doing this now. So hopefully when this is posted, maybe it'll be a couple months from now, and we'll kind of be a lot further. We'll see how things go. But this is a CBS Labs Black Queen garage kit that I got a few years back. Like, it's 2026 now, so I think maybe I had it for 2 or 3 years now. The goal was I wanted to make this into a Sage Extreme X-Men for my own collection. And sadly, I just never had a chance to work on her. I had a lot of emergencies, and I've decided that I'm going to utilize some other statues down the line to make Sage, and this one's kind of just been collecting dust. Because there's a lot of STL files out there that I kind of think would work better for Sage. So this one I didn't really know what to do with it. I didn't really want to make Black Queen off of her. I figured it would be fun to make a different character. So it was about 2 weeks ago, probably around Christmas of 2025, I was sitting down working on some stuff, and then I had an epiphany that it'd be really cool to make another character I've done before, but make it a what if, and I think this pose would be pretty cool. So I've fallen in love with Jessie from Pokemon. I don't really know much about the character, but I do love how this character looks. I think it's a really great design, and she has a lot of play with her, a lot of like on DeviantArt and a lot of artists. So I said to myself, I said, why don't I make a Jessie? Because this would be a good project to do, a good fun work in progress series, and then I can sell her off. And then this way you could fund another work in progress series, you know, so I could kind of keep the rotation going again. That's what I want to get back into with the channel. And I did a mock-up in Photoshop with it, and I think it's going to look really, really cool. We have a couple things I'm going to have to go over to change, but we'll kind of get into that in a bit. But as you can see, I said, you know, why don't we keep the corset? We'll add a skirt on her. We'll keep her gloves and boots as is. And then what we'll do is we'll sculpt the jacket with the R, but we'll do it in a short way where you kind of see the corset and have some cleavage showing. So I said, you know what, that would be pretty cool. I think it would be really cool. And I can sculpt the hair my way, and we could put the earrings on her and everything, and it'll be a really good, sexy-looking Jessie, but it'll be like a little bit of a what-if outfit. So I think this would be a fun project. Like I said, I fall in love with the character. I love making customs of her. I'm kind of getting to the point where she's almost like a Harley Quinn and a Jessica Rabbit, where if you make her hair and earrings with an R-like symbol, you can kind of give her almost any outfit, just like them. So I'm having a lot of fun, and I thought this one would be kind of fun, and I think maybe people might be interested in picking it up when it's done. It'll be a nice one of a kind, and like I said, it'll fund some other projects. So you can see it comes with this chair, and it has this base that you could put LEDs in, but of course my chair is a little bit, we're kind of going to go over it. I don't think we're going to do like the LED lights and stuff. We're going to make up another base for her because my base is actually damaged in shipping. So we'll go back to her now. We'll kind of go over some things, kind of do a little bit of the introduction video, plan some things out. I'll kind of, in this video, I think what I'll do is I'll go over like some of the prepping as I prep her and stuff. I'll film, and then after that we'll start doing the custom work and everything. But so as you can see, her hair is on the head, and it works out pretty good where this hair is kind of just detachable. It's probably supposed to have a magnet or glue it in at the end, but we don't have to worry about the hair, which is great. I could just sort of rebuild the skull, and I can sculpt out the hair. Now the head is magnetized into the body, which is perfect too, but this little piece with the collar I guess is paintable, and then it kind of gets like put in. So this will be the start of my jacket, which is great with the collar. So that's one thing I don't have to worry about. Now, as far as the arms go, we'll kind of get in a little bit closer. So the left arm is pretty good because you have this piece here, and it kind of goes in with a magnet like so. So it kind of clicks in pretty good. So I'm not really worried about that. We'll kind of create the jacket here, and then we'll kind of create the jacket wherever I put it. We'll just have to make it look like it's kind of squeezing underneath the corset area. Her right arm, got to be a little bit careful because there's no magnet in the hand. It's a glued in piece, as you can see. So I don't want to break these fingers, but this piece magnetizes pretty good over there. So that's pretty good. So this hand will be pretty good where I'll be able just to paint this in the black latex, and I could just glue the hand in at the end, and we're good to go on that. But sadly, she doesn't go in the base correctly. We'll pop off this head so we don't drop anything. There's something going on with this key, and I think I know what it is. It's kind of, if you kind of see, it's at a little bit of an angle. So she doesn't go in the base all the way. And I think what they did was they sort of like drummed out a really big hole in there. And they probably figured, okay, that was probably the key problem. But I think they needed to drill out more of this side in the key because I think the peg is hitting that. I'll figure that out. We'll get her lined up in the base correctly. And I don't know, sadly, if this rod goes all the way up there or if this is magnetized. I don't have a magnet right now. I don't feel like popping it out. But we'll figure out how we're going to do that. Now, none of these parts are removable, I don't think. I think they glued these in the factory, which, yeah, they did. Which is fine. It's going to be a little tricky, but we'll figure it out. So I guess I just got to kind of get this situated with the booty and everything, because it's, like I said, she's not lining up correctly with the back. It's something's pushing back there. But I think the boots are perfectly fine for her. I think it's going to look good. The corset's going to look great. The gloves will look good. And it's going to be looking like a really sexy version. And I like the idea of the red chair with the black base and everything. So we might change some things up here and there with some STL files. We'll kind of go over that a little bit now too. So one of the problems too, yeah, let's actually put her back. That's the other thing. Well, her heel broke off somewhere. I don't know what happened. I don't have the part in the box. So this heel piece is missing. So I don't know what happened with that. And I don't like the way this foot is touching this base. If you look at the way they sculpted the foot, this piece is cut off. So that bothers me a little bit. It should look like this. So I'm going to have to sort of raise up the chair a little bit and then kind of resculpt that where that foot is correct. So not a big deal. A little bit of maybe like some even blocks and kind of create something, or maybe have somebody I know print something out I could kind of glue at the bottom of the chair and lift her up, and that'll work out pretty good. Now, the only problem is there's all these little, like, you know, like little demon guys kind of around the back of this chair. There's this big skull piece around here. What I'm thinking of doing is maybe, you know, like, there's even, like, an air bubble in the tooth over here. It looks like it's going to break off. No, actually, it wasn't an air bubble. It was just a little smooch or something. I don't know. So I'm thinking maybe, like, what I could do is cut this off and find, like, you know, Pokemon heads and kind of put, like, little Pokemon heads around the base instead. Like, a little bit of, like, a demon type of thing or something. I don't really know. I'll figure that out when I kind of go through some stuff. I think it would look kind of cool and funny. And it kind of play off to a little bit of that sexy, weird look to her. And that's kind of the base and everything. So I think it would look really cool with the, you know, black metallic like they have on the base. You know, like the base, or maybe like a black marble instead. And then this red leather will make her pop out a lot more. And the black latex would be kind of cool. Now her base here is a clear base, and it is supposed to be put LEDs in there. And sadly, my base, if we kind of go over here and we look, it's already broken. Now I didn't really know that this was broken until just now. So this piece over here, all this stuff broke off, and it's kind of magnetized. Sadly though, I'm a little bit concerned about this because the weight of this statue going on this is scary to me. I understand what they're trying to do, but maybe I'm thinking maybe this piece is supposed to like kind of maybe go there to sort of support. I don't really know what that little metal piece or that thing is there. Maybe. I'm not sure. But this is, you're supposed to put like LED strips underneath here or something, and around here, and it glows. But I will not be utilizing this base at all. Because you can see like all this stuff broke off in shipping or whatever. So I'm not really worried about this base. This will probably be... I could utilize this for something else down the line to throw it away. I'm not really sure. I'm going to make a different base or get somebody to print me up like a little bit more of a designer base maybe. And I'm thinking of maybe getting that print I did a while back of Meowth and put next to her. Like maybe over here, you know, put like Meowth here or something. Or maybe over here, or I don't know. I'll kind of figure it out a little bit. I think the majority of the work on this is going to be like putting the skirt on her, the jacket, and then the base. I think the hair kind of will flow like I normally do, and that's pretty much it. So one thing I did realize about this though is, you see there's like this little weird switch between her legs. So if I put the skirt here and you see that little smooch there, it's going to look weird. So I'm going to have to kind of grind in this a bit, try to rework the crotch area. So this way when I put the skirt, it'll work. I'm thinking the skirt is going to go underneath the corset. I'm thinking like, you know, it'll kind of go here and then the skirt will kind of go underneath the V. And I think that's what's going to work out and it's going to look pretty cool. So that's kind of the idea for now. So I'm popping her out of the box and I'm starting this video now because I got to do some garage work soon. And I figured it would be a good chance to wipe this down because it's got a lot of like, I don't know if it's like handling stuff. I can tell that it's got like some stains on it before I prime it up. So if I do some garage work this week coming up, I can kind of throw this into the mix too when I get dirty and I heat up the garage instead of, you know, we're kind of still in the winter. And this way I could kind of just get it going and kind of talk about it a little bit more. But so I'm going to have to start planning what I want to do with the base. I'm going to have to start planning on how to lift her up. And I'm going to have to start planning of like what elements I want to put on these bases. Because I could sort of like chop out this little headpiece here. And I can have like, there's so many tons of like Pokemon like monsters out there. You can kind of put into place. Like I print out like a little head of a different monster. And I could blend it in. And we can make it look like it's kind of like the Pokemon chair. That's kind of like a little demonized or something, you know? Have a little fun with it. This piece does what I don't really know what I want to do yet. Because to chop this out and put it like a head back there would be a lot of work. So I'm not really sure about this one. Honestly, I would like to have this chair not have this type of look. But that would be a lot of work to kind of create just like a regular chair. I think maybe doing like the demon stuff with the Pokemon stuff, dropping the stuff out and putting it in would look a little bit different. Kind of like really change up the character where she's a little bit more of a sinister, sexy look to her. But that's about it for right now. I'm going to just sort of start planning this out a little bit more, thinking about it, putting it on the floor with all my other stuff for my side items. So this way, once I start doing more of the editing and everything, I'll be on track and I know what to do. But I'll keep you up to date on this whole introduction and prepping and stuff, kind of talking about how I prep it, how I clean it, and go from there. And then that is it for right now. So next step when we come back, we'll kind of go over prepping and cleaning, getting stuff situated and planning, and then we'll kind of see how things evolve for the first video until we get to the second one. I think this item was actually primed up, if I'm not mistaken. I think this is primer on this. But sadly, I don't trust painting over this because of a few reasons. But what I want to do right now, though, is just kind of clean it up. I find that these items, whether it comes from that company Ownage or if it comes from another company and it's primed up like this, I think what happens with these is since you're buying a kit, I think it's handled a little bit more with people's hands, and then it's thrown into those box with those black foam, and I don't think it's really ready out of the box to paint, or even slap primer on it. I like to kind of clean them down, so this is going to be a little bit of an experiment. I've done this with a few other like Ownage kits, and I find that you get like a lot of residue coming off the item, like it's either finger oils or it could be even like the primer was sitting in the box of that black foam, and then coming from China overseas, whether it came from a plane or a boat, you know, there could be moisture in a box and it could get like a little bit of like stuff on it. So it's always better just to clean your item, and this is something I've always done with like a lot of even the garage kits you get, because when you get like the old back in the day, like around the 2006 era, when you get those like kits that people would cast out with resins, some people use a little bit more mold release, and that's kind of like a waxy oil, and you want to get all that off before you spray your item with primer. So you can use 91% or 70% alcohol. It's up to you. The 91 or 90% is a little bit more stronger. You don't want to, like, you know, douse this thing and have it soaking in there, of course, but it sort of helps to kind of clean it up. Now, one thing I like to do is, like, this is now, we're kind of in the winter. This is January. So, normally when I would do this, like, I would do this in a garage, like, in spring or summer. and I could leave the item on the table with the garage door open like during the day, and it could dry up pretty well, and I could probably prime it up again that night, or I could prime it the next day. But since we're kind of in a winter, I'm just going to kind of clean this up now because I'm kind of like in between some projects right now. My stuff's drying, and I could sort of kind of clean this up. I could put it on the shelf and let it sit for a few days. I'm going to do the chair off camera because it's a little bit bigger, and I kind of want to do that more like over the garbage can because I don't want to get too much alcohol all over the place. Plus, since the window's closed in the studio, pouring this stuff out, you're going to have alcohol like fumes in the studio. So basically just put some on here, like, you know, your paper towel, and just kind of wash it down, and we'll see if this has any kind of residues on there. It's just good to really kind of get these things cleaned up, especially if you're going to put fresh primer over it. Now, the reason why I like to let it dry is because the alcohol sort of seeps into whatever primer they're using, and it could soften it up a bit, so you never know. But like what's happening now, as you can see a little bit, it does have a little bit of dirt coming off, and then right here, like either that was dirt or... see, like, that's kind of rubbing off right here. So I don't know what that is. I don't think that's primer. But it could be like a little bit of a dirt spot there. Or it could have been something, and then they primed it up. And then the primer's coming off. Not really sure. I've never really seen that before. But that's something that you just never know. Or it could have been like some oil here, right? And basically they primed over it, and then that is coming off. So it's just better to... be on the safe side and just kind of wipe it down, get it cleaned up. I kind of wish that they didn't piece this together. I thought this was separated, but it looks like they kind of glued it. I'm also a little bit worried though. Sometimes these factories is you tell the person that you're buying this, you're like, I want a kit, and that sometimes these factories are weird. Like, I don't know if it's a miscommunication. Like, I know I've ordered, like, a kit from somebody in the past, and what the factory does is they take all the items that they're supposed to do. Like, say they're supposed to do 100 kits painted, and then somebody, like, maybe 20 people ask for kits, right, out of that 100. Sometimes what they do is they paint all 100 of them, and then they forget they had to do a kit, and they just take the one that they painted and they slap primer over it, so you got all this thick paint. So that's what I'm a little bit worried about on this one. Only because if you look underneath the cleavage area, it looks like there could be skin tone there, and then over here it looks like there could be skin tone here. So that's kind of like something that I don't know why the factories do that. I don't know if it's a miscommunication. I don't know if it's just like they just tell the workers bang out 100 of them, and then afterwards they're like, oh crap, we were supposed to do, you know, whatever. But this one isn't as dirty. I mean, it still could be dirty, but I'm not really seeing like a lot of like residue, which is good. What we could do is a little bit of experiment right now, which is not the end of the world with this, is we can sort of sand down an area here, right? Okay, so this is possible that was skin tone, and we will know if they painted this area black. Okay, so this area was not painted black. Okay, so maybe they did have like the body parts, they painted up skin tones, and then they realized that there's supposed to be a couple that were supposed to be kits, and then they kind of slapped them in the box and primed it up. So yeah, I'm just kind of looking at this magnet here, making sure that there's enough glue in there. But yeah, I'm not really seeing too much dirt-wise, so I'm happy about that. I've run across a couple, though, where I've washed kits, and my god, the amount of, like, dirt and residue and oils that came off of it was unreal. But this one seems to be a little bit cleaner, but there is some areas underneath there that's sort of a little dirty. So, yeah. Now, like I said, even though the alcohol sort of kind of dried up, it still could be a little bit like seeped into this stuff, so let this stuff cure up pretty well and get stuff kind of cleaned up. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and kind of wash down the chair and some other stuff while I got a chance. And then next step is, I'm not really sure. I got to kind of figure out what the next step is prepping wise. But I think I might have to kind of get the garage kind of warmed up one day. So like I said, since we're in the winter, and sort of plan this out and get some primer. So I want to fix the crotch area in there, of course. I don't like that area. And I'm not really seeing anything else I think I need to clean up. But we'll see as we go. But yeah, next step is I'm going to kind of let this dry. And then we'll get this primed up. And we'll start kind of tweaking some stuff here and there. After washing her down, getting kind of cleaned up, I'm kind of going over the item right now. And I'm noticing that back in here, it's really, really rough, like overspray. So I think, like I said, I think what happened is they painted up the skin tone, and then they realized they needed to make a kit, so they kind of just glued it together and sprayed primer all over it. And what happens is whenever you have sort of gaps like this, or you have areas under here, sometimes whenever you're spraying, depending on like how much you spray, what kind of paint it is, if it's a very grainy paint, or if it's a smoother watery paint, or whatever, sometimes the paint particles kind of like get caught in here and they spin around and they dry and then they hit the wet paint and it becomes like sort of a sandpaper. I still have never really gotten that down perfect, you know, with stuff, so it's kind of tricky. But what I'm doing is I'm kind of going over the item before I kind of grind this out. We're kind of in like some really crazy cold weather right now, so I'm not even going in the garage to do any of this. So right now what I'm doing is I just got some of my dentist tools, my X-Acto blade, and I'm going around the area cleaning up, at least around here where all this glue. So I think what they did was they glued these legs on and they did a very, very sloppy job. Kind of, let me see if I could show you. So underneath in here, like right under there, there was a whole big glob of glue under there. So I kind of been scraping that out. And then I'm kind of going around the edges, and there's a lot of globby glue in here. You could kind of see there's like some gluish stuff over here. I don't know how well you can see it. Like it's like right in here. And then around here on the edges, it's kind of really globby glue in here. So if I was to just like paint this up, when I go to do the trim here, it would be all really messy. So I'm just going to keep scraping this off now and everything. And then I'm kind of going over the item a little bit more, and I've noticed there's a couple things that are weird about it. Like, when you look at the item like this, it looks straight. But when you look at her from this angle, this leg is completely sucked into her other leg. So that's kind of like a really... This leg should kind of be a little bit more. But when she's sitting on the couch, I guess you really won't know. But what I'm probably going to do, though, is you can see there's a huge, huge gap under here, too. So what happens is it's going to be a nightmare to try to get black paint in there. So once I kind of get this where I go, when I'm ready to kind of Dremel out this crotch area here and fill this in with Aves, I'm going to probably fill in Aves around here and kind of clean this up a little bit and around in there as well. So this way, when I go to spray my black paint, I don't have to worry about paint and air getting through here and creating a dust and all that stuff. So it's better just to seam all this up. Now, of course, like I said, I wish they would have gave me a kit and not glued this in, because I know this body is casted separate from here, but this is what they did. So it's like I said, it's not the end of the world. But I just kind of want to get this stuff scraped up. So basically, all I'm really doing now, I don't know the name of this tool. This is a very cool dentist tool I got years and years and years ago. It's like sort of like a triangle. It's kind of like a scraper. I've had two of these. One of them, one edge broke, but I still got this one left. It's really good because what it is it kind of like when you go on your item, you could kind of like scrape in the inside, and you could kind of get that like glue off of there and get in there. Of course, I have to use the X-Acto blade and stuff. Now, if by chance I scrape some glue and all of a sudden the leg pops off, that means that they just put glue on the edge and they never put glue in there. But I'm pretty sure they put glue in like the keyed area, you know. So that's kind of what I'm going to just do today. I'm kind of like in the middle of stuff. I'm probably going to go ahead and once I get this scraped up, I'm probably going to like go into like the bathroom, because I don't have a slop sink. I only have the bathroom sink. And what I'll do is I'll grab some sandpaper, kind of like sand all this down and get this cleaned up. Because it's just a little bit rough in here. They really, really sprayed this far away, and it's like sandpaper on my finger, like right there. So I want to get all that smoothed out as best as I can, because when I mask all this up and I go to do the black paint to make it look like that latex, you know, you really just don't want to have all that in there, because it's going to make it look worse. It's hard. It's never easy, but I'm going to try my best to see what I can do. So I'm going to go ahead and scrape off the rest of this, and then hopefully... you know, as maybe after we have this crazy storm and everything, snowstorm, and the cold kind of breaks down, I could get back in the garage and work on her a little bit. For her skull, I want to rebuild it. Now, right now I have a little extra Aves. So the idea with this is I'm going to put Aves around here, but I'm probably going to put on some rubber gloves, mix up some freeform air, and kind of rebuild the skull. So you can sort of see there's the line from where the hair was. I'm not going to follow that line. I'm going to kind of create a smooth skull again, and then I'm going to sculpt the hair from scratch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the Aves up here, and I'm going to mix up some of the freeform air and put it back here. And then when it's cured, I'm going to smooth it down. And then from there, what I'll do is I'll Dremel into the skull, like into the Aves again, and I'll create a wire going around where I want to kind of do her curved hair. And then I'll put freeform air around that, and then I'll have my basic armature. And then from there, I can sculpt the Aves and kind of give it the detail like I've done in the past with one of these other Jessies I made. But I really want to rebuild the skull because it's just easier, especially back around here with the neck. I mean, yeah, you could follow this line with the hair, but I don't like the way it comes down that far and everything. So I kind of really want to do it my way. So basically, all I really do is take this A's right here. It doesn't have to be like a perfect skull right now. It's going to get shaved down. It's just easier to do it this way, I find. So basically all I'm doing right now is just kind of taking this A's and putting it like right here along the edge. And I'll kind of create the dome again and sand it down. It's just kind of like, basically it's just trying not to waste material. What I'll do is I'll kind of just bring this in like this. I just find that I definitely need the A's up around the forehead area and the sides. Because this way, when I sand it down, it's easier and look better than freeform air. So probably what I should do is I should probably take some of this here as well and kind of bring it down around the side. Gotta push this. I just came down too far because if I tried to sand this down, it might sand down that eyebrow, and I don't want to do that. This is a little too far down as well. And I noticed that some of this, I guess this primer is sort of coming up a bit with the finishing solution. I always want to say safety solvent, but they call it finishing solution now. I know what I should probably do. It's just for this, just kind of throw a little spacing here. So it looks a little weird, but that's fine. It's not a problem. This will all start getting sanded down. So I'll take this over here, smooth this out a bit. Same thing over here. Alright, so that's a good start there. Like I said, when I put the freeform here, I'll kind of, shave this and work on it. But you can kind of see how it's looking. So I'm going to go ahead and mix up some freeform air, put it around, let this cure up, and then if I get a day I can get into the garage, I can sort of sand it down. We can kind of create the armature for the hair. I'm going like, usually I kind of do the hair last, but because the weather's so damn cold and we just had the snowstorm and everything, I'm not really ready to get into the garage and do anything, so I'm just trying to do little things here and there on this, so this way, when I do get into the garage and I heat it up, I can like work on this along with the other stuff. So let me go ahead and get the freeform air on there and we'll let it cure up. Had a chance to get into the garage, and what I did is I got a chance to sort of chop up that crotch area, so kind of clean that up. I used a just a regular drill bit, you just use for like drilling into wood and stuff, but a thinner one. And what I did is I kind of went into the areas and I kind of just did it slow, because if you go too hard you can actually snap those easily, at least the ones I have. So I just kind of did that and clean up. So what I'll have to do is I'll have to put eaves in here and sort of fill it in, and then use, I have a lot of this sandpaper. You really can't find this much anymore, but it was 3M. It comes in sheets, a little bit stretchy. So you're able to kind of cut strips off of it, and you could put it between the legs like this, just to show you. Just kind of like getting everything prepped up still. But you could put this behind here, and if you hold the piece, you could kind of go back and forth like a saw, and you could saw between legs and stuff. So if you're able to ever find this stuff, it came in rolls and it came in sheets. It was like a gimmick there for a while. And then what happened was I decided to, I just knew that when the Home Depot by me stopped carrying it, it was going to be like discontinued. So I went onto a website and I ordered like 6 rolls, and I have like plenty of it to last me years. So it's really good stuff. And then what I also did was I dremelled out over back in here. You can see these little notches, because you're not really going to see this in a chair you're not really going to see this area in the chair. I guess that's why it's kind of like this. So I figure I want to lock these legs in place because, like I said before, you have this gap here, and trying to get paint in there is going to be a pain in the ass. But with a little extra eaves, will sort of lock this in place and help it from like any kind of like moving or any of that stuff. Still went around. I'm kind of cleaning up these edges around the boot still, chopping up some stuff here and there. Like I said, I'm going around just looking at, seeing what I need to do, and I'm also trying to sort of plan how I'm going to do the skirt. It's going to be a short skirt. It's going to kind of like bunch up. We'll kind of get into that when we do the skirt video. And other than that, I'm going to start trying to find elements for the chair. So I thought about the chair more. Let me grab it real quick. So while this is just kind of prepping everything, I decided I want to try to really put like you know, Pokemon, little Pokemon around here. So I'm gonna go online. I'm gonna find a couple like heads and stuff, and I'm gonna see about grinding this out. Put like maybe a Pikachu head here, another head over here of another character. Print out some small heads for like around here as well. Something around there too. Just kind of run with it. I'll probably kind of maybe take off the arms or stuff, but I want to have a little fun with it. We'll see. And then it's going to be a little bit, so we have 2 skulls here, so maybe I can use that one skull that I'm working on for the Misty Savage Land that I kind of got going on right now. So I got to just find a couple things. I got to ask some people if I know that could kind of print me out stuff. And then I think the next step too is while I'm planning that out, I got to get into the garage and figure out why she's not lining up correctly in this chair. She just does not want to go in at all, and I don't know why. It's almost like it's got to be the key. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in the garage right now and kind of work on that. I'm just going to kind of grind in there and see what's going on. I'm going to just kind of grind out this whole area and stuff. And then it'll probably give me a better idea, because I want to make sure if it's actually this key, or if for some odd reason when they glued stuff together they misaligned something. So I want to make sure she goes in flush. So I'm going to work on that now. We'll come back. We'll see how it looks. And then I'll probably do is when I find some elements of heads, we'll kind of go over that as well. I'll try to have someone print those out for me. And then I guess we'll kind of finish up this first part of the video of kind of prepping everything. And then I think the next video is going to be working on the skirt. And then the video after that will probably be working on the top jacket. And then another video for the hair. So I'll kind of split all that apart. And then I guess the last one will be like printing. So just trying to plan it out a little bit better. So let me get this at least cut up for now. It is freezing out there. But since it was so damn cold, and I didn't really want to sit there and keep messing with the figure and everything, I just went ham on the hole. I just grabbed my Dremel tool with the sandpaper wheel, and I went in and I just grinded that area around. I figured it's got to be something more, not with the rod, because it wasn't hitting anything. It was something more with this key, and now it fits in there perfectly fine. So it's fitting there fine. But it's sadly, it's moving because I went so crazy on it and stuff. It should be back a little bit more. And one thing I am realizing now, which I think is going to cause a problem, hopefully I can show it to you on camera. You see the way this key is? See how the key is sort of straight, but then the rod kind of bends? I think that was the problem what they had when they tried to put this in. I think what it was is the rod was bending in the beginning and it wasn't going in. So they dremelled out an area thinking that was going to correct the issue. But what happened is it's not, because the rod is sort of like doing this. So I got to think about how I'm going to do this. I don't really like this rod, to tell you the truth. I don't even know if it's magnetized. I would like to get this rod out of there, and I would actually like to make a better key, whether it's one of my key stocks with like a magnet, or keep this key but try to get the rod out, which I don't know if it's going to happen. So let's try and just see. Sometimes this works, sometimes it doesn't, but it's always kind of good with these customs I do on the side, since I don't want to. Sometimes you don't want to do this with somebody's item. So what we do is we kind of get our tool and see if this sort of turns, and see if this comes out. Now it is turning, but I don't know if I'm turning the primer, or yeah, I'm just kind of grinding the metal. I didn't actually do anything. It's a very soft metal. You can see I kind of grinded it. I did a little bit of probably kind of hard to see, but anyway, I was kind of hoping maybe it would be like only like a little bit. I can't imagine this rod coming up this leg. I don't think they would do that. But let's try it again. I don't know. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It could be either the cold, it could be the heat. I think I am turning it. Maybe I'm not. I think I am. Yeah, I am definitely turning it. I'm not. I think I am. You know, a good way to find out if I am. What we'll do is we'll kind of make a little bit of a mark with a marker. Kind of see. Nope. Okay. Come on. Do this without breaking anything. Alright, so yeah, see, it's bent. It's not lining up with the key correctly. So, well, actually, it could have been turning, and maybe the primer wasn't. The little resin piece wasn't. Nah. Alright, so trying to figure out. See, that's the problem I don't like with sometimes when they do keys like this. I mean, the key is okay, but the rod is at an angle, and that's going to cause issues. You know, something like this, I almost wish there was no rod there and it was just a key. I mean, we have a lot of play here, you know. So there's a lot we can do to make sure she's situated to stay in here. So, I don't know, I'm going to have to kind of mull this over now for the next day or so while I work on commissions and think about, do I just kind of like grind down the key and try to get this out? Do I cause any issues? Like I said, this rod could go like to here. This rod could come all the way up to here. I don't know how far the rod is. I don't think it's a magnetized. But let me grab a magnet and just see. Just to double check. Because you never know. It is steel. Okay, so it is magnetizable. So that's actually a good sign. Usually the metal pieces you get in kits or these statues are like a zinc plated or zinc, and they're not steel. So that's a good sign. But alright, I'm gonna have to think about this a little bit more. Like I said, this is all the process of trying to plan this out, making sure we can see what we can do. But like I said, I don't like that it's magnetized. Actually, now that I look at it, I didn't even really grind out the metal. It is a strong steel. That was just marks. That wasn't actually like grinding the metal. So, yeah. Alright, so things might change now. I might keep it the way it is. And maybe what I'll do is I'll put some, whatchamacallit. I could put a magnet down in here. And then what I could do is I could put A's. And I could sort of kind of create an A's key in a way where she's not like movable like this. And then she kind of stays in one spot and able to come out. It might work, it might not, I'll see. Yeah. Okay. And one other thing we need to plan out is raising her feet too. So these need to come up a little bit more, so this way we can fix that shoe, because like I said, this shoe is kind of cut there and I don't like that. So what I can also do is see if there's any Pokemon type stuff that maybe I could kind of put at the bottom of these to raise it up a bit. So I got to do some 3D files looking this weekend and seeing some stuff I could pick up. I know there's a lot of free stuff online that I could just say, okay, that head looks good, that head looks good of that character. I'm not going to like pick any specific characters that, like, you know, I'm just going to kind of see what's free and I'll put them on, and I think it'll kind of look kind of cool. So that's kind of where we're at with the planning phase. At least I know now that the reason why she wasn't going in was because of the key wasn't chopped up a bit. So, alright. A couple more steps down. We're getting there. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, it's be more like that. Alright. A couple more things to do and we're getting there. So I'm still planning some stuff out, and I figured I'd have a chance today to sort of do this mock-up. Since we're sort of in that deep freeze, I don't want to go in the garage and work on the figure at all today. So I figured let me do this email up and get it out to the printer. So a while back I did a Thundra kit, and the person who printed it was Nick's Dimensions. I'll try to, if I remember, I'll put his information in the description. He is printing out another 2 kits for another client for me, and I asked him, I said, well, if you're going to print those out and send them to me, I said, why don't you just print me a couple of Pokemon heads that are free files. So I went on Colts, and there's all these free files and everything in Pokemon, and that's kind of the goal. I mean, this is just like, it's kind of a ghostly chair, so I'm not worried if these heads are perfect, you know, or, you know, super detailed. It's going to work good for the chair. So you can pretty much see is what I'm doing is, I'm doing these markups for myself and also for Nick, so he knows what to print. So this head right here, this big monster head, I thought would look pretty evil back in the chair. So what I'll do is I'll grind out that head and I'll put this one on. So what I'm going to ask him to do is sort of like cut the head. I did another picture. Hold on. I think, yeah, right. Nope, that's not it. Yeah, hold on. I got it. I got all these pictures and emails and all kinds of stuff all over the place. So anyway, so you can see this one is huge right now. Okay, let's kind of shrink this down. Alright, so basically this is kind of the idea. So you see, this is where that monster head is, and then I figure what we'll do is this. So I'm going to ask him to sort of, if he can sort of cut the head, and then what I'll do is I'll grind it out and I'll blend it with Aves. So basically he'll be able to save on, you know, resin, and it won't be as expensive. And even if he pretty much prints it hollow, I figured he could cut the back of the head, cut off the legs and the arms, and then I can do the rest. He doesn't need to make it pretty. It just needs to be cut and work, and then I can put this head back there. So that's kind of the idea with that. So that monster head, like I said, I'm not really know the characters, and I'm not really like worried about if it fits her. I think it's just gonna look kind of cool putting different ones there. So these are all just free heads. There's a free was the Pikachu. I know that's Charizard. That's I forget that one. That's the turtle dude. This is the snake, and then this is the file I already have that I using for the Misty custom. So I figured I could just kind of email him that one. And that's kind of what we're going to do. I still don't know if I'm going to have room for her to put a Meowth next to her. And I don't think I will. I think this wants to just focus on the chair and have this stuff. And that's it. I don't think I want to make a bigger base to add a Meowth on it. I think it's just focus her and that's it. So this is kind of the mock-ups. Like, this is kind of what I do for printers sometimes when I work with them going forward, is I do a mock-up where I know what I want and it lets them know what's going on and stuff. Instead of just saying print this, print this, print that. The idea is they don't need to worry about all this extra stuff that are with the characters. They can maybe slice it in their programs and just slice off the head, and it makes life a lot easier and you don't have to worry about all that stuff. So that's kind of what I'm doing right now. But just to give you guys an idea though, chairs right here in front of me. You can see these heads are pretty much like the size of a quarter. So that's kind of like what I'm doing, like the measurements, except the back head is kind of bigger. But these things are about a quarter size. So it's going to be pretty easy just to grind them off and stuff and throw them on. So that's kind of what I'm doing. So I'm going to go ahead and finish up this email, get it out to him. And then I'll come back and we'll see if there's any other prep work or anything else I'm planning on doing. Which I think I got to figure out, like the feet here too as well. And then we'll kind of close out the video, and then the next one we'll start working on the figure and stuff. since we're still in the prep phase, I'm still trying to plan all this out. So while all this stuff is sort of being like designed and ready to be printed, and I can start grinding out the chair and doing all that stuff, I'm still working on her to figure out how I'm going to put her in the base. So what I'm going to do is sort of kind of create my magnet key system like I normally do, but I was able to get this rod out of her booty there. So what I did is I went into the garage and I put this piece into the vice grip that I have on my workbench, and I tightened it really tight. And what I did is I started turning the figure. Now I've done this a lot of times over like a lot of my customs because the vice grip on the workbench, you get more like leverage than trying to like use a pliers and kind of do it this way. Sometimes the plier stuff works, but the vice grip works better because once you sort of kind of snap it, if you're lucky, when I say snap it, not snap the statue, but sort of snap the like the bond between the resin and the metal. And I was lucky that this was like a smooth piece and it wasn't like grinded up, because sometimes when you grind it, it's even harder to kind of twist it. So what I did is I twisted her, and then all of a sudden I heard like a pop, and then I was able to kind of twist her easy. And then as I was twisting her, I kept moving her up and up and up, and then all of a sudden it popped out pretty good. So this rod is still in good shape. Now this is actually steel, and this is kind of like magnetized, so I'm going to keep this for down the line. If I ever have to magnetize something or use some kind of like rod in some kind of arm or something, I can keep this. So whenever I pop stuff out of statues, if I don't destroy it too much, I always throw it in my box of parts, because you never know if I'll need something down the line. So that's pretty good. Now, what I want to do is I want to kind of create my magnet system on this chair. I'm not going to go as like a hard magnetism where like if I'm keying up an arm and I need to have the rods, and this is going to be a little bit more simplified. Well, we'll go over the parts now, so this way when I cut everything up, you'll know what I'm doing. I've done this in many of my videos before. I tell people on my live streams on how I do this, so we'll just kind of throw it in this video and give you all the information. So this is square rods. This is your square typical rod. This is called key stock. Now the reason why they call this key stock is you know your door handles? Your door handles where you have one side of the door handle and the other side of the door handle? Well, inside there is a square rod usually, and it's called key stock. And the reason why it's square is that when you turn it, it turns the rod and turns the doorknobs. Because if it was rounded, it wouldn't turn. So if you ever take your door handles off your house and you're going to replace them, if you're going to throw them away or going to throw them to a scrap guy, go inside and take out your metal rod, because usually it's a square piece about this big because it goes between your door, and you can utilize it for your statues. It might not be steel, it could be steel, it might just be zinc, you never know, but usually you can use it for this type of stuff. Even if it's not magnetized, you could use it for a bottom of a foot. And then if that character goes into the base, you kind of create this system. So it doesn't always need to be magnetized, but I like to have stuff that is magnetized. So this is like steel zinc plated. So it means this is magnetized and it's not just zinc. But they do make key stock rods that are zinc that will not magnetize. So if you ever go to a hobby store or if you go to a hardware store, bring a magnet with you. And then if you see these rods and buy like, you know, their like the rod section, wherever it is, you can put the magnets on there to see if it's magnetized, and that'll kind of give you an idea. Now, the other rod you'll need is a K&S hardware that is square, right? So this rod right here comes in two sizes. One, you have what we're going to be using is the 3/16. So it's the 3/16. That's the rod for this one because it's the bigger one. But they also have a 1/16, I think it is. Is it 1/16 or 3? Let me see. I got so many stickers here. 1/8. I'm sorry, it's a 1/8. So they do make smaller, thinner ones that if you have like a smaller area you need to kind of create like a magnet system, you can get those as well. I think so let's go with this one. So the 3/16 rod you need is K&S 8154. That's the rod that goes to this one. And what it is when you cut these pieces, as long as you don't crush this hollow stuff, the rod goes in there like that. See how the rod goes in perfectly good? So this is kind of creates the system where the rod goes in like this, right? And it can magnetize. We'll get to that later. And what it does is it stops it from turning. See, if you have a statue with a round peg in the foot and you put it on your base, if there's not like a key that goes into the base as well, what'll happen is with a round rod, it'll twist and it'll turn, and you could scrape up your foot, you could break stuff and all that. The square rod stops it from turning and it keeps it in. So, like I said, we'll kind of go over that as we get to it. And then basically what you do is you cut this stuff and everything, and you add magnets and eaves, and it's a little bit of a process, but I'm just giving you guys the information right now. So for this one, it is 3/16 key stock, and then K&S rod 8154. Okay? So that's kind of what I'm prepping right now for the chair, because what I want to do is when her booty and stuff goes in here, I don't want just this key here, even though you could, in theory, do this key. But the problem is this type of an item going in here like this, with that kind of key, I would be a little bit worried because, like, you see how this kind of wobbles? Or if you kind of pull it the wrong way, see, you kind of pull this the wrong way, you could break this. So that little rod in there sticking out with a magnet will work. So we're going to do it for that. So I think that's going to be that right there. So when I get to this stuff a little bit better, we'll kind of go over it. Right now, what I'm doing tonight is I'm still kind of planning some stuff. What I want to do is I want to mix up a little A's, and I kind of want to lock this in place because I figure I'm going to get a chance to get into the garage soon, and I figure if I could throw some A's in here and get this cleaned up, I could sort of do all my sanding. I could kind of clean up in here and get this kind of cleaned up and go. So it's kind of where we're at. I'll go over this key stock when we kind of create the key a little bit better, but I just kind of want to let you guys know I'm still prepping. And then what I'm also going to do is looking at this chair, I think it's not even too. So I'm going to have to figure out if I have some blocks of resin in the garage in my box of parts and see if I can find some blocks and put it on and even it out with her foot and then sort of kind of do some kind of sculpting and make it look cool. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But alright, let's get this filled in with some Aves, and we'll come back and we'll kind of create the key. Okay, so I'm going to mix up some Aves to work on her legs. For those who are new to the channel or new to building and customizing, I'm going to go over Aves Epoxy Sculpt. Basically, if you've never used this stuff before, you mix A and B together in equal amounts. And you sculpt with it. You have about a 3-hour work time before it starts hardening, and then like after 8 hours it cures hard as a rock, and it's basically resin. So this is called Aves Epoxy Sculpt. This is A and B. This is the color red. The reason why I use color red is because I do work on a lot of gray priming customs. So I find that when I customize onto the gray primer, I can see really well with the red. There is other colors. They have a natural, they have a white, they have like greens, oranges. I just got stuck with red because when I was really getting into this and I started buying more and more Aves, red seemed to always be on sale because I guess it wasn't a popular color, and I was always getting it, and it just worked out really well, and I like it. They do have a natural color. I don't really like it because I think with a little bit of the dye they put in with the red, it seems to sculpt a little bit better. I know it sounds weird, but I feel that certain dyes in the Aves kind of screws up this consistency. I've used their super white, and I find that it's very milky, and it just causes issues. They also have a black color, which is very like heavily dyed, but the red seems to go work perfect. Now, they also have a product called Fix-It Sculpt. Fix-It Sculpt is basically the same thing as Epoxy Sculpt, but it's a little bit more durable. Where when you mix Aves Epoxy Sculpt in your first time, if you sculpt like a little bit of a cylinder and you hold it, it sags really fast. The Fix-It Sculpt doesn't sag as much. It's a little bit more of a sculpting material, but it comes in a 3-pound kit, I think it is, whereas this is a 4-pound kit. Or maybe no, this is a 2-pound kit. I forget. So I started with the Aves Epoxy Sculpt. And then I discovered that they created a Fix-It Sculpt a couple years back. I started picking that up and I liked it. And then what happened is one day when I started mixing up stuff, I had a little thing of Aves, regular Epoxy Sculpt red, and I had some Fix-It Sculpt that I was working on something. And I said, you know what, let me mix these two together and sort of use it as a filler. And when I mixed it together and I started using it, I found that it was like perfect. It was just like, it just worked out perfect. I can't really explain it unless you like work with them enough and you understand. So I basically pick up these two, and I kind of mix them together for all my sculpts. And it gives me like a pink hue sculpt, and it works out great. They also have something called finishing solution. They used to call it safety solvent, but now it's finishing solution. And I will suggest, if you ever buy epoxy sculpt, don't try to buy alcohol, don't try to use water, don't try to use any other medium. The finishing solution is made specifically for epoxy sculpt. And I have tried alcohol, it does not work with this stuff. I've used water. I talked to the owner of Epoxy Sculpt a few years back. He says what happens is the Ave sucks in the water, and then it crackles and it breaks up. And I've done experiments, and you can use water, not to really mix it, but you can use water to sort of smooth it, but I suggest getting the finishing solution. If you're very concerned about mixing this stuff and touching with your fingers, get yourself some gloves. I really only use the gloves when I mix it at the start, because what happens is if you mix it with your bare hands, you get it all over your hands, and then if you grab something, it causes issues. But if you want to wash your hands after you use Epoxy Sculpt, pick up a bottle of that orange hand cleaner. You get it like Home Depot. That stuff, like if you mix that up, it helps bring off all the use residue off your fingers at the end of the night or whenever you're working. So, with that being said, I have a little container here of the finishing solution. I like to use these little containers. This way, you know, I put a little bit in at a time and I can use my paintbrushes, and I'll kind of go over that in a second. So, basically all you really need to do is grab, I don't need that much because I'm just going to work on part of her legs now before I call it for the night. So I just need a little bit about that much. So you figure that's about like the size of a quarter or so. So that's B, then this is A of the red. So I just kind of, some people, I have a friend who I make fun of him. He actually scoops it out and he levels it and tries to make it perfect. I basically just eyeball it. I think if you practice and you keep practicing, eyeballing it, it's going to help you with sculpting. That's just a little bit of as I've done through the years. You get a little bit of an idea of kind of like rolling in your fingers on each finger, or you kind of go like this, and it gives you an idea that that's kind of like equal amounts. You know, if there's a little bit more red or a little bit more of a B, it's not the end of the world. It will mix fine. Unless you have like a big chunk of this and you have a little dab of that, it's not going to work. So just try to eyeball it. That's what I do. If you want to sit there and measure it, then you could go ahead and measure it. It's all preference. So same thing here. Now you might say, well, these two are the same color. They might be the same color, the B and B, and they actually might be the same. And it might be A that's different, but just to be on the safe side, I always grab equal amounts of each one. It's just easier that way. Now, I will also suggest, if you are working on an item, if you do mix up A's, until you get to the point where you think you know how much to mix when you work on a project, if it's going to go bad, have another item next to you that you might be working on, or a filler item, or if something's hollow and you want to put like filler inside the item, have something extra with you, because like after a while you start realizing you might be mixing up A's, and then all of a sudden you're always having filler. Sometimes what I'll do, if I don't have a filler item, I'll roll out the A's with a rolling pin and baby powder, because you can use baby powder with this stuff on wax paper, and then I create flat sheets of A's that I can also slice up and cut and use for customs as stuff. So try not to waste your material. Alright, so now we have basically equal amounts of AB, AB. Now what I do is I take the safety solvent, I always call it safety solvent, it's finishing solution, I've just been working with it so many years. Get it in your finger and then sort of mix up your A's, right? And what you want to do is you want to mix this stuff up pretty good. I might have mixed up a little too much, but like I said, I got filler items next to me I can use and stuff. So you see how this is kind of creating like a pinkish color now? This kind of creates that perfect basic mixture for me. Now, you see how it's sort of breaking up and it's like sort of not quite there yet? The reason why I'm using the finishing solution and I'm putting my finger on and doing this, it kind of starts giving it like a chewing gum feel, right? See how it's kind of like breaking up, it's still breaking and splitting like that. If you keep using this safety, oh God, I keep doing safety solvent, it's just a habit. You keep doing this, put a little bit more each time. it starts getting really, really soft. And it's not breaking up as much. It still is, but not as much. It gets really nice and soft. And like I said, once you mix this up, the finishing solution gives it like a nice good mixture. It gets nice and soft. And you just kind of rub it with your fingers like this. And then basically, you got a nice little soft gummy piece. Now, if it's still kind of breaking up a little bit, you could keep adding more. But we're getting to the point now where it's not doing as much like it was. And we're nice and soft, and we're good. Now, that's kind of like a nice chewing gum look, like Bubble Yubba or whatever, or Bubble Gum, or whatever you want to call it. Hubba Bubba, that's right, Hubba Bubba. It's been a while. So, you see how it's kind of like red on my hands? So that's kind of why I like the red, because it lets you know where your residue is. If, like I said, if you get the natural color sort of like hides. You don't really see it too well, so you get a lot of that color all on stuff, and you won't even pay attention. And when you're working on something, if you're not careful, like you might with the natural color on red, if you're working and all of a sudden you got a chunk over here, you might not see it with the natural color, and then when it cures, it's a pain in the ass to get off. But with the red, you could know that there's a little bit of a spot there. Alright, so with that being said, let's move this stuff aside. I like to sculpt with paintbrushes. Now I got a whole bunch of paintbrushes over here. They're a mess, but I used to go to an art store called Jerry's, it wasn't Jerry's Artorama, it was Jerry's Outlet? No, not Artorama. Was it Artorama? I forget. Anyway, they got sold, they finally, I guess the owner sold out and sold it to a chain, so now it's Jerry's Artorama. I think it was Jerry's Outlet or something, I don't know. I used to go up north and pick up these brushes. Now, when I first started picking these up, they were only like 79 cents, but now through the years, they're like $2.60 or something. So I found a place online where I could sort of buy these now, where I don't have to travel north. Basically, my goal is anytime I work on a project, I factor in about like 4 or 5 brushes to the cost of, like, you know, because they go bad over time. So you kind of use your solvent and you kind of work with it. So, like I said, if you're a little bit like sensitive to these chemicals, or you're very worried about your hands, you can use gloves. Just be very careful, because the gloves can have like chunks on there, and then it could kind of get onto the items. But basically, all you really need to do is, once you get that nice gummy Aves, you can kind of just start popping it into places. Now, like I said, I have a lot of videos on my channel. I do this live on my streams, and basically you use the paintbrush and the finishing solution to kind of squeeze it into the area. Now, if you don't like paintbrushes and you want to use a tool, you can use a tool. It is completely up to you how you sculpt and how you want to do the item. I just personally like the paintbrushes because it goes on nice and smooth, and you kind of fill it in like that. Now, we do have a little bit more to fill in on these areas that I kind of chopped up. Now, Aves, when it cures, you can Dremel it, you can drill it, you can sand it, you can scrape it, you can chisel it. It's really, really great stuff. It's probably the best stuff out there I've ever used for customizing. There's a couple other companies that had stuff, but I just say Aves is the best. Sadly, though, if Aves ever was to go out of business or not make it, then I would not know what to do with customizing and stuff, because this is my go-to chemical for this stuff. Because it bonds to anything. You can use this stuff even if you, let's say, I don't know, you're working on your house and sheetrock has a big hole in your sheetrock, or a little hole like that, and you had some extra Aves, you could shove it in that sheetrock. It could cure, you could sand it down the next day and paint over it, no issues. It bonds to plastic pretty well. It bonds to metal pretty well. You probably could fix car quarter paneling with this stuff. I wouldn't suggest it, but you probably could. I just don't know how it would handle with the weather. You know what I'm saying? Like cold and hot weather and stuff. But you can see it kind of fills in this areas pretty well. Now, yes, you can use other clays and chemicals. I know some people have suggested stuff like, I think it's green stuff. You can use that stuff. Whatever works for you, but I use Aves, and I just find that it just works better for what I do. So you can see over here, like I don't want these gaps, even though it kind of really, the way it was sculpted. But you can kind of fill it in, like so. Okay, now over in here, this is kind of hit a little bit more than that foot should be. And if you have other paintbrushes too, or tools, I have dentist tools, I have paintbrushes, I got all kinds of stuff here. Trying to find the one. Alright, so you have this type of brush, which is a little bit like longer. You can kind of get into some areas and sort of make life a little easier. It's just that we want to fill this gap as best as we can. So, and it's just a matter of going these areas and just kind of getting into this stuff. So now, this area in here, we want to clean this one up as best as we can too, over in here. So we can use the smaller one. And like I said, this Aves, I'm just using this as filling the cracks, but we're going to be using this Aves throughout this project to sculpt her skirt, to sculpt the jacket, to redo the hair. The hair we'll be using another product down the line too as a armature, but we'll get into that when we get to that video. But this stuff is great for locking in stuff too. I've used this Aves for attaching body parts, attaching arms, creating magnets, sculpting hair, sculpting outfits, boots, rebuilding fingers on a broken item. If you have a missing finger and you know how to kind of build off of like a piece of metal, you can use that. So Aves do everything, but you only have that 3-hour work time before it starts to harden up. So like right now it's very soft, it's fresh, but over time it'll start to harden up on you and it starts to get tougher. And you can, if you're a sculptor or you like working with the tougher stuff, basically what you could do is you could mix up this Aves and you can kind of like sculpt like a foot, a semi-foot, and you can let it cure for like an hour or two, and then you could kind of go in there and start like pulling it off and kind of messing with it a bit. Or what you could do is you could create an armature. So like say if you're sculpting a hand, what you could do is you can create a sort of like metal wire, and you can sort of put like the skeleton bones of the Aves to kind of let that cure one day, and then next day you can sculpt over that Aves. So you don't always have to like sculpt in that 8 hours, like that 3 hours, and get it done. You do in sections. I always build in sections. So for instance, if we're going to build the skirt when I get to it, I'll kind of work on this area first and build like the skirt coming across, let it cure. And then the next day I could Dremel something out and I could work out the wrinkles. So it's always like I work in days, in sort of sections. So that's what's good about Aves, because then the next day you could sort of sand it down and you could build it up and you could prime it and keep going. So that's kind of what I do. But we're kind of creating, we're locking these legs together plus working with the sculpt. You know, it's like the best thing. So it's a little bit messy in here. And then you kind of get in there with some sandpaper later and clean it up. But let's kind of just try our best. Now the only problem with the finishing solution is it does pull up your paints and primers. Not much, but if you do use a lot, you see like that white behind the leg right there, like right there, it's sort of pulling up that primer that's on this item right now. But it's not the end of the world. Now see, there's a big gap underneath there and everything, so if I try to get in there with like paint later when we paint that, it's going to cause some issues. So I want to put a chunk in there. So now this is where we kind of want to use a dentist tool. So I have some go-to dentist tools. This is a very old one of the first ones I've had. So basically what you do is you kind of take it and you use that to kind of jab in there like so. And then you go back to your paintbrush and sort of kind of get in there a bit. So this one is going to be a little tricky because we have the boot now coming onto the flesh. Now you might be wondering, how do you get in here to sand this stuff? We'll go over that later. You can kind of create little sand tools. I'll show you how we get all into that. But anyway, I just want to keep getting there. So basically, if you're good enough and you have a really brand new paintbrush and you're only working on one project, I work on so many at one time. It's hard, but you can really smooth out the A's a bit if you're really good with it. And then as it hardens, you can smooth out. So if you really get used to working with it, you can really do some good stuff with Aves. Alright, so we have that little gap underneath there. So we want to kind of use a little bit more Aves over in here. Now you see how this part right here is not fully down. Normally with something like that, I'll let this cure and I'll sand it down, but there is a little gap. I have putty. I could put a little piece of putty there and smooth it out that way. So you can always use other stuff on other stuff to kind of build up. So you don't always have to just say, oh my god, I got to just use Aves and that's it. So, alright, so for here, basically what I want to try to do is kind of get this Aves in there like so. Now the good thing about Aves, so you don't have to sit there all the time, so you can actually take your dentist tool and you can kind of like cut it off and you can pull out the Aves and do that. So it's just a matter of just working your sculpt, getting stuff where you want to go. Now normally what I'll do is I'm just kind of showing you guys on camera right now. Let me get a little bit underneath this boot. But I do have headgear, and what I like to do is once I kind of do this, I put on my magnifying headgear and I get in closer. It's hard to do it while filming and streaming because I kind of got to look into the item. I'll show you my headgear too, because like I said, this is a work in progress video. I want to give you guys as much information as possible. But I'll show you what I like to use. Okay, hold on. Alright, we got to get in there and clean that up a bit. But anyway, so I like to use this headgear here. It comes with the light. Basically, I forgot how this works. So I never use the light. So anyway, it comes with two little spots here, so you could put like two pieces on here. The reason why I like this headgear is because it goes up over my forehead and it comes down, and it's a wide lens. I'm not really a fan of those headgears that have one lens here, one here, and it's got like that black gap here. I like to have the wide lens here, so this way when I'm working, I could see everything. Plus, basically, it's got the tightening in the back and everything. So this is like the headgear I like. Now, the only problem is sometimes I drop this stuff and it breaks these. Because it comes in like a pack of like 5 different, you know, magnifying pieces. So what I do is whenever I'm like down to one left, I'll order like 2 or 3 more on eBay. They're not the most comfortable in the world, but I just like them because I can see everything in front of me like this. This is what I like. So it's just a little bit of a habit. So basically when I have the headgear on, kind of like if I'm in front of the camera, I'm kind of like looking in the item when I'm doing stuff to kind of get a little bit clearer and stuff. So that's going to be a problem throughout the series, is sometimes I got to do stuff off camera because I'll be hitting the camera right here in front of me. So it's a little bit of a downside to the way I work, but I'll do my best. So yeah, on this side, so say you wanted to do like a little bit more, so like say how we seamed that up, but it's kind of like, oh my god, it's a little bit messy. If you do have your dentist tool, or you have any other tools you make, these dentist tools are my go-to. Basically, once we get into more sculpting, I'll kind of do a little bit more information about this tool. But you can kind of sort of, or if you have an, you can kind of like cut too. You know, like if you wanted to, you could cut like a line into your A's and let it cure. It all depends on how you want to do the item. So with this one, we can sort of kind of create a little bit of a line. But I'm going to have to sort of kind of get off camera to get into here a little bit better. To kind of line all this up. But that's just like sculpting. So that's kind of that right now. Like I said, I just wanted to get this done. So like I said, I mixed up way too much Aves for what I had to do here. But like I said, I have filler stuff next to me I can use. So that is a good thing. I gotta probably do the back of this leg here too. So I gotta kind of clean this up. Yeah, so. Yeah, so that's Eve. So what'll happen now is, let's see. I'm gonna kind of clean up that part a little bit. I think I need to get some primer in here to figure out how I'm gonna do this section. So what happens is now, basically, like say you're done, you let this cure up for the night, or for the day. And then once it's sort of dried up, the next day you can come back, you can sand it, you can prime it, you can do whatever you need to do with it. And that's pretty much Aves, and that's what you're going to see throughout the whole series. I'll be using a lot of this, and any other putties and stuff I use will explain. But it's great stuff. It's really, really great stuff. So I'm going to stop this part of the video. I'm going to do this off camera, only because, like I said, I got to get in closer and see what I'm doing. And then once we come back, we'll see the next steps. Alright, so as I'm working on this, I realize that this doesn't add up. Even though this part, some of this is probably going to be hitting from the chair, this part isn't. So what I'm doing is I'm putting some Aves here, right? And I do this with a lot of my customs. If I'm working on something, even if it's like I'm going to repaint like a factory item from like maybe Sideshow or Bowen, or if I'm doing a garage kit or whatever, sometimes I feel that there's something missing from the item. It doesn't make sense to me. You know, like, and I understand when you build kits like this, you kind of cut it in a way where it's just easily to build. But since this is all attached, we might as well kind of do that little extra pop to it. So if this leg is hitting here, but you have wrinkles in your boots here, you have wrinkles in your boots, you would sort of have wrinkles there hitting that leg. So basically what we're doing is we're putting some Aves in here, right? And we'll see what happens if I put some here. So I put some Aves like this, right? And then kind of put some Aves here. And sort of kind of start creating like a wrinkle, like the boot is being pushed a little bit. Because in reality there would be some kind of push there. And if I don't like it, I'll scrape it off and I'll add some more. But definitely should look like something's being pushed there. And if you're ever working on something and you don't know if you're doing it right or if you're missing something, the good thing is grab your item and check as well. So if we put this here, we realize we're not going to see a lot of the leg underneath there, but just over in here. So that makes sense that there is some kind of wrinkles there, right? Okay, so now that I know that, what we'll do is we'll put just a little bit more in front, like so. And then basically, it's just a matter of trying to sculpt a little bit more wrinkles. Now they can be subtle, they can be heavy. You can try and match what's there, like the way the sculptor did. That's always a hard thing, especially if there's texture. If there's texture on the item, it's almost impossible to match it. But if there's not, or hell, if you're building the kit, and I always tell this to people, and there's a texture, but you don't like that texture, there's nothing wrong with you sanding it all down. It might take a lot of work, but at the end of the day, it is always your item, and you can do what you want. There is no right or wrong way to build your kits. If you want to add stuff, take stuff away, change it into another character, that's the fun about the hobby. It's always doing what you want to do and what you enjoy on your shelf. So don't feel that just because they gave it to you that way, it has to be that way. But this is a little bit tricky. So you could kind of sort of create the wrinkles with the dentist tool a little bit. Kind of help you where you're going to sort of kind of create. And then you go back in here with your paintbrush. This is the way I work. So it's just a matter of sort of kind of creating this. But it can't be sort of attached to the leg. It's got to sort of look like it's being pushed off the leg. So it's tricky. And you know, not every kit and every custom's the same way. So you got to kind of figure it out. And like I said, you have this work time. If for some odd reason you're working on it, you don't like it, you can scrape it off, clean up the area, and try again. But for me, I just want to make sure we sort of kind of create something. See? And this is why I say, this is why I use the pink, because the reason why now is I can see what I'm doing on the gray. Now there is red primers, there's black primers, there's white primers. So if there's a specific primer you use that you like so much, you can go ahead and sort of keep that. So now we did that side, there's probably would be a little bit more wrinkly sort of over on the side too, because you could kind of see this area. So this is something I didn't even think about until I just started working on it. And I had no plans to sort of do this with the legs until now. I figured, oh, everything would be fine to just fill it in, but it kind of just dawned on me that if this area is touching and you have boots squeezing next to each other, there will be some kind of wrinkling going on. And that's just going to help the sculpt and make it a little bit more pop, I guess you can say. Let me kind of go back here with our tool. Sort of. This is kind of what I do. Just kind of keep going back and forth, work the item, work the stuff. Sometimes the item needs to kind of cure it, like when I get to the hair needs to sort of start to toughen up as I'm working on it, and then I'll know that it's kind of start adding more details. So it's kind of like you just got to kind of learn your item, get used to the A's, and seeing what works best for you. And there's been times where I have worked on an item and I thought I did a good job, and when I come back the next day I realized that, oh man, I completely messed that up. And then the reason why I use primer is because when you use the gray primer and you use A's, so say I had to sort of sculpt something here, like say diamonds for Harley Quinn on her leg, right? I had the gray primer, I put the eaves on, the next day I look at it and I realize that the diamonds are off. Because sometimes you're working on something and you're thinking, oh my god, I'm doing a good job. But then when you come back the next day, you realize that, oh my god, I screwed something up. So you could kind of sort of grab like an X-Acto blade and sort of pop it off, because the eaves will kind of hold as like a barrier. It's going to stay on for the whole sculpt, whatever. But sometimes you might need to pry something off, and you kind of do that. So you could kind of see what I did here with that. It kind of created a little bit of wrinklage there. So I just got to go in there and sort of clean it up a little bit more. So now you see, like, I can't get in this angle, so sometimes you got to kind of look what you're doing and kind of bring your brush at this angle and kind of do something like this, you know. So it's sometimes you just got to learn to work the sculpt. But this one back here is a little bit trickier. So, and then when my paintbrushes go bad, and they do, I'll throw them out, or I use them as texture tools. So sometimes when these brushes get really tough and you can't clean them, so basically at the end of the night, you use your finishing solution, clean it up. You know, have like maybe a paper towel, kind of clean it up. And then what I do is I go into the bathroom and I use soap and I kind of really clean them up. And they get really funky over time. They get bad, and sometimes they get really tough if you forgot to clean them. So you can use them as like a sculpting item too, for like, you know, maybe if you want to like sculpt rocks or a texture, or if they are kind of like soft but they're kind of like gunky, you can use them like for a dry brushing item, like if you have to dry brush paint. So don't overthink that once you mess up your paintbrush, it's gone. But if you sort of really let it cure up and it's just hard as a rock with Aves, then yeah, it's dead. But that's kind of the point with these. So I'm just kind of creating this little wrinkle over here. It's a little tricky, but it's going to work out. Should look pretty good. So alright, so I just wanted to show you guys that, what I'm doing. Like I said, I gotta get in a little bit closer and see what I'm doing, but that's gonna look a little bit better now with like kind of wrinklage pushing against each other. So we're not gonna see most of that. And if the wrinkles are too bad when I go in there with sandpaper, or if like the A's is sort of sticking up from the primer and it's not completely flat. We'll kind of go over that down the line with sanding and priming and stuff. So, alright, I'm going to get back to this off of camera, and then when I come back, things should look a little bit better. Alright, excuse the fan, got the heat on. So what I'm going to do is, since I'm working in the garage and I got to get some stuff sanded down, I'm sanding down the head and I want to get basically a skull shape going. So what I was just testing out, and I just put this on, this is a sand wheel. Basically they come in little discs and you got to unscrew it. I find that this tool is really great for sort of grinding down to a point where when you feel comfortable that it's okay, then go in there and fine tune with like sandpaper. Because if you're sitting there and you're just sanding and sanding and sanding with sandpaper, it takes forever. But at least with this, you could kind of grind it down a little bit faster. You just got to be careful with this tool, because if you go too much, you could go over grind. So it's kind of, I kind of grind to where I need to go, and then I kind of stop, and then I go in there with the sandpaper and fine tune it a little bit more. I mean, a lot of this up here doesn't really matter. This doesn't need to be smooth, but it's kind of around the forehead areas that I got to get it. So what I do is, I've showed this in the videos too, excuse my mess and everything. So this is my shop vac, and I set it up here onto my vice grip. I mean, you can set it up any way you want, but what I like to do is try to, you know, not go crazy with as much dust as possible, even though this is kind of like winter and I got to do my spring cleaning. But this right here just kind of helps the dust down. I'm always changing the bag and filters in there too every so often, and it just makes life a lot easier. So basically what I do is I just kick that on and I do it in front of here, and I let a lot of the dust go into the shop vac, because you really don't want to breathe this stuff in as much as you can. And then of course I have my mask on too as well, and my glasses too. Always wear safety glasses, whether you have seeing eyeglasses or safety glasses. Wear something with all this stuff, because you never know, something's going to kick back into your... Now that I sort of need glasses now for looking up fairly close to stuff, I used to wear shop glasses all the time when I started this hobby. So basically I'm just going to kick this on, sand it down, and then we'll kind of go back and we'll use sandpaper. Okay, so I kind of got it where I want it. One thing too is be careful with your shop vac if you're doing the way I'm doing. There has been plenty of times where I'm working on like a hand or a head and it's gotten sucked. I kind of lost my grip and it got sucked into the thing. I try and turn it off real quick so I could just get it at a hose, but there's been a couple times where I lost something really important and I had to go into the shop vac, cut open the bag, go through all that dust, find the part, and then redo the bag and all that stuff. So if you have a better system where, like, you know, maybe you could set up like a block with like a screen in there, and then basically you could suck in the dust, but if something falls in there, the screen stops it. I always kind of wanted to make something like that. I've never done it. I'm just so busy with working, I kind of never really had a chance. But maybe one day I could create some kind of like block here where I could like basically hook up the shop vac to it, and it goes onto a screen, and this way it sucks in the dust. But the problem is I don't want to make a big block, because I like the shorter, the small thing, because it gets all that dust in there pretty well. But it doesn't get all the dust though, of course, because if the further you drive away or the harder you grind and stuff flies all over the place, it's a pain in the ass. But so that's kind of with that. Now, basically the next step is, you know, this is a 120 sandpaper. You get these sheets at Home Depot. And basically what all I do is I kind of rip them and I bend them. If you look over here, I got pieces ripped up all over the place. They go bad, they get bent, they lose their sandpaper, and I just throw stuff over there, and then what happens is I kind of just throw it all away. So yeah, it gets messy in this garage, but this is where, you know, you do all this stuff anyway. So let's go ahead and turn this on, and basically all I do is kind of just do this. And then basically I kind of just get that sanded down. And then once that's done, there's 3M sandpapers. They come in blocks. You have a fine, medium, and then what I do is I slice these open, you know, slice these down, and I kind of go here and I kind of fine tune the area a little bit and smooth it down. So this is the medium, which is a little bit rougher, and then this is the fine, which you could kind of fine sand it down, and then you get sort of like a nice little area. Of course I got to do more of this, but it's kind of just giving you an idea. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and put the camera away, and I'm going to go ahead and sand this down and get this to a nice shape as best as I can. So this way, this kind of head will be pretty much situated and ready for when we need to start doing the hair. Just got out of the garage, and I went ahead and did some chopping and sanding. So first off, the head. So you can see the head, I sanded it down, got everything nice and clean. So if you run your fingernail kind of like between the resin and the eaves, it's kind of not, sometimes it's perfect, sometimes it's not. What I like to do is I have this stuff called Tamiya or Tamiya putty, whatever you want to call the company. It's a gray putty. Really good stuff. You need, have crazy amounts of crap here. Alright, so this stuff is good for filling in scratches and kind of leveling sometimes, but not actually leveling. If you got really like a deep scratch and it's kind of like, you know, I got a chunk of like resin up here and then resin down here, sometimes this putty doesn't really fill it in because it's not really meant for really thick gaps. You can if you kind of keep filling it in, but it's more or less for like kind of like really thin scratches and sort of filling in like maybe air pocket holes and stuff like that. So what I like to do is more or less just grab one of these rubber tools. This is like rubber tools for sculpting. Basically, they're really good for kind of just grabbing some of your, you know, putty on there. And then over here, just kind of put some going across here like this. This kind of helps like even stuff out when you use some fine sandpaper on it. You know, I just go around these edges just to kind of... Now, this stuff dries fairly fast, but sometimes if you put too much on or there is primer there and you don't let it dry at least long enough, you kind of go to sand it down and it doesn't really work too well. But this one I'm kind of just putting this on and I'll get back to it another day or the next day. Or if you're doing it in the morning and you got some other stuff and you come back later during the day, it should be fine. I've used this stuff in real time when I'm painting and I find a scratch. I could kind of go in there real quick and kind of fill in the area and then sort of sand it down in like a couple minutes and finish painting. So it's really good stuff. You can prime on it, sand it down. When you sand it though, just don't breathe it in. I don't think this stuff is really good. Well, I don't think any dust is, but this stuff seems to be a little bit more harsher. But there's other putties out there people use. I just like this. You know what it is? I guess I got used to it for so long. It's kind of like, why try something else when this is kind of working for me and I kind of like the way it is. So I just go around those edges, you can see. And just let that dry. And then I'll come back to it another day, sand it down, and it's good to go. And then I can prime up the head and start working on like the hair stuff. But we're not really ready for the hair yet. We're still kind of like prepping up the body and stuff. So here, what I did is I went in there and I sanded down that crotch area because I want to rebuild it. Because I figured the way this is going to work, it's going to be easier if I could sort of build this in. And then when I do the skirt, I could set it up in a way where I could get the paintbrushes in there. That's kind of what I'm more worried about. Of course, the idea would have been great if, like, you know, this is cut and you could paint this piece and you could paint that piece and you kind of connect them and glue them in and you're done. But sadly, this is a piece that's already put together, so I got to kind of do the best I can. Now, after I kind of took down the crotch area, you see I'm kind of like trying to build up that like crotch area, even though we're not really going to see much of this anyway. I'm just trying to sort of kind of like building this. I don't really know where I'm going to put the skirt yet, you know, on her. I mean, even though it would go here, but since she's got a tight skirt, it might come more here. We'll get to that later. What I did is I started drumming down the underwear they had there and stuff, and I realized I needed to kind of go in further because what's going to happen is, since this is sort of like kind of more of a resin polystone, trying to sand in here will be a nightmare. You know, like if I put a little bit of a eaves in there and then I kind of sand it down, the problem is if we start hitting some of the polystone resin or whatever this resin is, it's going to be very hard to sand it. Where if I just have all eaves in this area, it'll be very easier to kind of get some sandpaper or kind of create like a sandpaper tool, get in there and sand it, and it'll make it easier. So what I did is I started drumming this out because I figured let me build the crotch area first and then I'll build out the like thigh muscles afterwards. What happened is I hit an air pocket and then I then what happened is I realized the air pocket went around here and it went to here. If you were to look underneath here, it's probably very hard, but there's an air pocket going into here, which I'm not really too worried about. This is just something that a lot of people don't realize is these statues that are casted up, there is air pockets in their statues. Sometimes it could be a little tiny air pocket that's like 3 inches down in the resin you'll never ever see. And sometimes this whole entire area could be an air pocket with like 2 millimeters of thick resin that's there. And it'll never happen unless one day you sort of tap it. Or sometimes maybe there's an air pocket like you said, like I showed here, and then you're picking up the statue and all of a sudden it breaks off and you realize that you had this little candy shell. See that little type candy shell? So that's kind of like maybe 1 millimeter or 2 millimeters of resin. This is very common in statues. This happens. All the statues I've stripped down, I've worked on a Prime 1 statue where the Hulk torso was all hollow holding up the big piece and that broke on somebody. I've worked on Bowen designs where there's air pockets on items. I've done plenty of sideshow statues where I'm drumming in an area and all of a sudden there's like a huge air pocket in the whole thigh. So what happens is sometimes when you hit these air pockets, like say you dremelled in here and you realize this whole thing is an air pocket, instead of like grinding out the whole area and working it out, you try to shove eaves in there as much as you can so it fills that air pocket so you keep the outside shape and detail. It's a pain in the ass, and then when they cast these items up, there is errors on them that they have to patch. So here, you can see this yellow resin. See this little yellow? That's actually patch. So when they casted this area up, there was an air bubble here and here. So they probably put in some putty, let it dry, and then they sanded it down. So that is very common too when I strip down statues. So these statues are never ever 100% perfect. I know a lot of people think they are or they should be, but everything from a custom statue to a sideshow to a Bowen to a Kotobukiya to Prime 1, Pop Culture Shock, Premium Shock Collectibles, all these statues over the years, these things always come out casted and there is errors to fix or sometimes bubbles or whatever. So it happens. But what I'm going to do right now is before I close up shop tonight, what I want to do is I want to kind of build out the crotch area as best as I can first. So I'm going to mix up a little A's and I'm going to kind of create the crotch area, which is like just a crotch like that, what I'm talking about. And then I'll let that dry, sand that down, and then I'll kind of try to work out the thigh areas. Because I want to try to get this to a point where at least I could get paint in there somehow and make it work. So it's going to be a little tricky, but I'll figure it out. So let me get some A's mixed up. We'll kind of build that out. I'll mix up enough A's where I could kind of shove in here and kind of fill this area in as well too. And then after that, when that's done, I'll probably have to sand that down a little bit and then work out the thighs. The goal is I'm not going to try to sculpt underwear. I'm just going to try to sculpt it where the point of where underwear would be is kind of like where I'll try to get the black paint in to make it look like she does have underwear on underneath. So that's kind of the goal. We'll see how it works out. I'm hoping for the best, but we'll see. So it's the next day, and I want to sand some of this down, but as you can see, it's pretty difficult to get in there. So what I do is I like to make sanding tools. Throwaway tools, easier to kind of do it than try to get in there with sandpaper and screw anything up. So if you have like wooden popsicle sticks, basically all you have to do is take your popsicle stick, grab a, pair of pliers, and then basically all I do is I kind of just do this and I kind of break it like that. And then I have 3M pads. This is the medium, and then they also have fine, so you can kind of see. And what I do is I cut off a strip, and then what I do, whatever kind of piece I have, I take my piece of popsicle stick, and then kind of cut up like where I'm gonna cut this. You can make thin ones. You can kind of make like really nice little thin pieces too, like this, if you want to get in a little area. But this one I got to do a little bit thicker, so I'm going to use it in this angle here. And then all you do is get yourself some glue. I suggest never use super glue. Use like BSI gel glue. The stuff is really great. And then basically you can do one of two things. You can either put it on the wood or put it on the foam. But for this one, we're going to put on the foam. This thing is actually dried up. There's not really much glue in there. So anyway, I guess there's a good chance to show you glue. So if you get this BSI gel glue, it comes in a little box. I try to go on like eBay or Amazon and get like find deals to get like 5 tubes at a time. And basically it's closed like that. You get 2 caps. Because what happens usually, by the time I get to like middle of the tube, this cap gets kind of like funky. So if you pop it off, you put on the other cap. Sometimes I could go through a whole tube without messing up the caps, but it happens. You don't really need to pop that. It pops itself once you put this in there. So you just screw on that cap, like so. And then basically just take this and put a little line going this way. You don't really need that much. Then we have Instaset, which is a bottle like this, Instaset. And this is what I put this bottle in here like this because it's a little bit easier. And then what you do is you take your piece of popsicle stick or whatever tool you want to use, put it on that little thing of glue, and then take your Instaset. And you don't need a lot, just a little bit, just kind of do like that. And hold it there for a couple seconds or so. You don't need to put a lot of glue, but you don't want to put very, very, very tiny where it doesn't hit. Just enough to sort of keep this on. And then once that's there, it stays, you got yourself like a little sanding tool. So, that's all you really need to do is take the cardboard, throw that away. Make sure you don't lose these caps because they're very important. It's a nightmare when your glue gets caked up and stuff. So one thing too is you want to be very careful of your Instaset not to get near your glue tube. So like if you're sitting here doing it like this and you put your Instaset here, these fumes can kind of cure your glue in the tube and screw everything up. And especially if you have your residue on your fingers, or if you drop this Instaset on there, it cures it in a second. So try to keep these separate as best as you can. So once you get that done, right, like I said, you can make up different sizes. You can make up one that has a little bit of a smaller piece. Oh, that fell on the ground, we'll get it later. And then after that, once you get your little sanding piece, if you're careful, you can just sit here and you can kind of glue that in and sand it down. Now see how that's a little too much? So since I put a little too much on here, use your X-Acto blade and you can kind of sort of slice it down if you want to. Kind of get a little bit of a smaller area, and then now basically you could go into here and do this, see? And the good thing about this is you don't have to worry about if it breaks, or once the sandpaper is done, you just throw it away and you can make more. So it's always really good. You get like a box of these off of Amazon, 3M sponge foam sanding pads. Medium and fine. I think they have ultra fine, but I don't really get those. If you want to buy ultra fine for buffing, you can get a ultra fine like box set of these things on and these are more like polishing sands. They have all like crazy super fine, but these are more for just sanding like this. Now normally I would do this inside the garage, but today is like 16 out with wind like crazy, so I'm just going to kind of sand this down and do this. So basically I'm just going to kind of get this cleaned up, get it to where I like it, and then we'll come back and I'll start working on the inner thighs with some A's because I really want to get these thighs and crotch area done. So we got a little bit of an update. We're still kind of in prep phase. You know, we're still prepping, we're still planning, we're still gathering all the elements for the custom project. Nick from Nick's 3D Dimension was printing out a item for a client of mine, and I asked him, I said, well, since you're printing out that item, would you kind of just print these heads for me real quick? So I'll leave his information in the description if you guys are looking for a printer. So he was kind enough to print out these items. So this head's going to go back here, you know, take this head away. So what's going to happen is this is hollow, because I told him print this one hollow and just cut off, because he was able to cut off the arms and stuff. So what I'll do is I'll probably grind out this head around here on the outside, and then I'll grind out this area here and I'll kind of put it on. I'm going to try to get it on as far as I can. I don't want it sticking out too far, but it should work pretty well. We have all the other little heads here. There's little pieces sticking out, so you know, like these little ear pieces sticking out, and then you have the teeth in here that are sticking out. Those pieces might break. You know, even like Pikachu's head, which I'm gonna probably put back there as well, and grind this off with the little head. And then you have these little ear pieces too for these guys. So what I'm thinking of doing is when I put this on, you know, I'm not trying to make everything perfectly uniform, because I think when I paint this up, it's going to be like I'm thinking it's going to be like a darker marble-ish, black marble kind of a look to it, maybe, or something, or granite. So I wanted to make it look like it's worn and broken and not perfect. So some of these teeth might be breaking off, maybe a horn might be breaking, or when I kind of put the heads on here, like even these ears and stuff here, what happens is I'm going to kind of blend in the swirl, so I got to try to even it out best as I can. So that's kind of what I'm thinking of this. A little bit of time. Like I said, this is all prepping, this is all getting the elements, and then once I actually work on this, we'll kind of do like a video of just focusing on the chair, you know, and then we'll do the video focusing on her. But right now, we still got more to go, so I still want to get her finished up. I want to get her locked into here with a key, and then after that, we're kind of done with all the prepping and planning, and then we can go on to all the custom work. But with that being said, though, I really like how 3D printing, for me at least, is opening up a new world of customizing and stuff. Because back in the day, if I wanted to put heads on here, it was either try to sculpt it myself, or maybe find like toys, you know, like plastic toys, or broken parts on eBay or something, or maybe find a statue and then you would have to make a mold and copy and pour in resin. But with 3D printing, it kind of just, it's opened up a whole new world of customizing. So, you know, if you ever have like an item like this, which I was worried about, like, Jessie will look cool in the chair, but the chair doesn't really kind of incorporate into the whole Pokemon universe. But now with all these elements going on there, it'll look kind of cool. So that's kind of the point. I'm thinking it's still like, I'm still planning in my head how I'm going to paint it. It's definitely going to be like a leathery reddish chair, of course, because that'll make the black and white pop out a lot. But as far as this part here, I'm thinking more like a blackish marble or something, because I want her latex to be shiny and I want this to be all flat. So we're going to see where that goes, but it's definitely going to be dark, you know, maybe even some rust in there. I'm not really sure yet, but it's kind of just thinking out loud as I go. But alright, so I think the next part I'm going to try to do is we're going to try to get her butt keyed into this thing, and then I think then we're kind of done with all the prepping and planning, and then after this we could kind of shut off this video and we can focus on the next one, which I think is going to be working on her outfit, and then we got her hair, and then we're going to work on the chair. So I think that's kind of like the video series, how it's going to go forward. So we'll see how it goes. So all I need to do now is get this stuff set up with the key, and that's kind of the next part we're going to focus on. But I just wanted to kind of do a little quick update of everything that's coming. So we're going to work on the key now, and as you can see right here, this is the rod. This one's already kind of cut because I was working on other stuff, so I had something cut here already for another project. So you see how this is sort of like all kind of messy and everything. One thing to do is if you have a wheel tool, one of these grinding tools over here, or I use this one over here for this stuff. So if you have this one here, basically what we want to do is we want to flatten this end and round this end, because it'll be easier to go in and out of the hollow brass rod. So basically when you want to flatten it, use this. So that makes it flat, and then we want to round it. So I don't have a hollow brass rod here anyway. So you can see it's kind of rounded there, and it's kind of hot to the touch, so be careful. So it's easier to put into the hollow brass rod area than having a sharp area and kind of not flat. So it just makes it a little bit easier, right? So the next step is to go back to here to her booty, and we kind of put this in here, and we kind of line up where we're going to go. So sadly, that's about as much that's going to go into there. We don't really need to go that far, but we want to sort of right about here, I think. Something like this. We don't need to go crazy. We want to make sure we have enough room to line up. So if that goes in there, so this is about going that far into the booty, which is plenty. We don't need to go any further than that. We have a lot of dust in there I got to get out. So line this up. It's going to go to right about here. Double checking. So cut it right about there. See if this is kind of, yeah, so, alright, just making sure. Alright, so next step is, if you have a Dremel tool with one of those diamond cutter things, you can do that if you're not really, you know, want to sit there and cut this. But I usually just put these in a vice grip, and then what I do is just use my metal hacksaw for cutting metal. So that'll probably be a little hot, you know, to the touch, so you got to be a little bit careful. What I like to do is I go back to my wheel tool over there. Let's see, usually I have a pair of pliers here somewhere, which I'm not seeing at the moment. Let me grab it over here. Got to be careful with this because it gets a little hot. What I like to do is I like to try this end that we just cut, sort of make it like a point as much as possible. So we'll turn this on. So the reason why I kind of made that like at least a little bit of a point is when we push Aves into the booty and area, it kind of goes in a little bit easier than having it flat. So that's kind of why I did that. So it's hot to the touch right now. Good thing it's kind of cold in the garage. So that's kind of just cutting up the rod for now. So I'm going to go and use this tool here. Make sure you have a mask and stuff. So this is one of those blow guns. You can get these for like computers. So when I had my old computers, I used this to kind of blow them out whenever I open up the cases and stuff. But since I have like the new ones, you really don't use this anymore. Plus it's got a lot of power to it. So I'll use this to kind of get all the air and all the dust out of there in a second with this shop vac. But I'll do that after I turn off the camera. And that's kind of like, you know, what we're doing for now. So let's get back into the studio. We're going to mix up some A's. We're going to get that rod lined up, and that's kind of it for the day. We let that cure up, and then I have to go back and clean everything up, get the booty and stuff, and we're going to work out the magnet on the chair. Then once that's done, pretty much all the prep work is kind of ready to go. So we're going to put this rod in here now. I mix up some A's. Now, one thing you want to be careful of is whenever you put a rod in here, you want to be careful. Sometimes you could do it with your finger and you could get it in there and it works. Other times you might be able to use a pair of pliers to kind of push it in, or a piece of metal kind of to push it in. Or sometimes what I like to usually do is use like the desk. We'll kind of do it with this one. You want to be careful because sometimes depending on if you're holding something that could snap, or if you're holding something that's very hollow, like, you know, maybe an arm, like if you squeeze in there and you kind of hit it at the wrong angle or do something, you can split it. So it's always case by case, because like even keys, if the key is very thin and you push in too fast, it'll split the key too. So you got to be careful what you do. So make sure you got your rod. Everything's pretty much lined up on this and we're good to go. We put the rod in like so. Make sure you kind of line it up in the beginning where it should go. And then, like I said, it's very hard to kind of push in with your finger. If you can do it with a rod, you know, like a pair of pliers, you could kind of do it like this way. And sometimes what I like to do, if it's a very long rod and it's going up a leg, what I'll do is I'll probably kind of like push it down on the desk like this. I know you can't really see the angle, but kind of push it down and go like that. And it kind of, or like what I'll do is I have the metal rod here and I'll kind of push it this way, just to kind of see which way it's going to, you know. So I got to make sure I'm kind of lining this up correctly now. So you got to, this is kind of where basically you start kind of trying to line this up. So you got, maybe sometimes you got to use like a pair of pliers. And what I'm doing is I'm kind of turning the item as I go, and I'm kind of eyeballing it to be like straight where I want it to be. That's kind of it's a pain in the ass. It's not always perfect, but it's a lot better than just putting in a rod and walking away, and then when you come back, it's kind of at an angle. So we're kind of looking at it, how it's going to go into the base. You know, make sure we're kind of turn. And sometimes if it doesn't work the first time, sometimes I'll have to pop the rod out and reset it. So it's possible it doesn't work always on the first try, and sometimes it goes in there pretty well and it lines up. Because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to line it up with this line, trying to line up with this line, so you can see it's kind of a little bit messed up there. So we're going to kind of push this over, and I'm also trying to line it up with the flatness too of the bottom of the key. So we're kind of looking pretty good. So the next step is just to double check. This is the first go, you know, like don't always expect that your first go it's going to be perfect. Sometimes it's best to, you know, get your keyed area and kind of make sure you're kind of lining up correctly. So let's put this up on here. So what I'm doing is I'm getting down on my knees and kind of looking underneath here to see how this is sort of lining up. I'm wondering if it's too high of a key now. Let's kind of push this in a little bit more. No. Okay, so I think her booty sort of hangs off a bit. I actually never really kind of looked at the... Alright, you know what? I'm going to pop out this key, this rod, and just double check, because I have a funny feeling... Oh no, okay, so it doesn't. Yeah, so you do see some of her her booty underneath. Alright. You know what I'm going to do? It's not... See, I'm kind of a little bit concerned at the moment too. This is why I always say prep your stuff. I'm going to go get her right arm, and we're going to come back and double check. Alright, so, like I said, it's always good to double check. You know, the A's is still soft. We're not, you know, it's not the end of the world. So looking over here, it's not really touching this area here. And I think, I don't know if it's because of, I'm not really seeing, it's like, I mean, the arm situates. Alright, so I think we're gonna have to do a little bit of toying with this with some A's afterwards. So I think I'm gonna line up the key, because I don't think it's the key's the issue. I think it's where the arm sits and where everything else sits on her. So like I said, it is always good to double check everything. I'm not really a fan of the way things are lining up. So what I might end up doing is when we get the key lined up on there, I might have to grind out some of this chair here and maybe put some little A's on there because I don't like the way this gap is. I don't know if you probably could see it better in the camera there. I'm not really sure I like that gap because I don't know if she's supposed to be sitting a little bit higher, but she doesn't. Yeah, maybe. So maybe that's it. Maybe she's too far down. So I think what we'll have to do is we're gonna do the key, and I think what we'll end up doing is she's got to be pushed up higher. I think that's what the problem is. She's not. Yeah, there's something there. So we might end up putting like a little A's in here and kind of like squishing it down and then kind of seaming it a bit. And I think with her booty area too, she's got to come up a little bit backwards. So I'm thinking maybe it wasn't the key. I think it's just. It could be the legs. I think it's the legs. Maybe the way they glued in the legs, maybe they didn't line it up correctly. So I think there's something there. But I'm going to get it to the point where when you put this on and you get this in the key, it works out pretty well. I would like to get it where I can you could kind of just put this on. But the problem is if you do that, it's going to scrape. So I think this is going to be one of those things where you line her up with the arm on her, you know, but it's still magnetized. But see, it's kind of like hitting, so we're going to have to kind of work on this key a bit too. So that's later, not a problem when we start working on the outfit. So let's go back to the key. Let's get the key in here, and then this way that'll help me line it up. So round 2, like I said, always good to test everything out, double check, just like in when you do a construction, measure twice, cut once. Same thing with kit building. Always double check your item. Make sure stuff's lining up. Especially kit building too. That's kind of one mistake I made when I first started getting into the hobby. Is I'm sitting there building the kit thinking everything's going to line up correctly. And then before you know it, you realize nothing's lining up right. And you have to go in there and sort of start fudging stuff. That's one thing you kind of have to realize with kit building is you gotta sometimes come up with your own plan and make it work. So we're pretty much there at that bottom. So we have some extra A's. Damn, I thought I must have really cut the hole pretty deep there. So I have some of my safety solvent. I always say safety solvent. Still gonna keep saying that to the day I kick the bucket because that's what I remember it for. So if you have some dentist tools, you go ahead and you sort of kind of push in here. Try not to get any residue on the top of the key, even though you can sand it down later. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of build the key around. Let me go ahead and mix up a tiny bit more, and then we'll do it. So it's the next day. Key worked out pretty well. I kind of sanded it down a little bit, but I noticed that one little side kind of wasn't like at like a good angle. So I sanded it down. And it looks like the rod isn't perfectly straight with it, but that's because I kind of did it at an angle. I mean, it's pretty much straight in the key, but whenever you have a key, you know, like if you're putting a key into a base and you're going to make like a thing, you want stuff to have an angle to it, because if it's kind of at an angle the wrong way, when you put in the key and you try to pop it out, what we're trying to do with like baby powder down the line, I'll show you, it'll lock into place and it won't be good. Like basically everything's got to be sort of like at an angle or perfectly straight. I always find that when I make my own keys, like, you know, when you put a head key in here, they kind of like are pretty straight going in. That's good because if you're doing 3D printing and stuff, you know, it cuts it perfect. But when I make my own keys, it's a little bit trickier, so I try to do things at like angles. So with that being said, what I did is I went in the garage and I cut myself a piece of the steel, the K&S brass rod. So this is number 8154, you know, here. So I cut off a little piece, I grinded it down with the wheel and everything, and basically you want to make sure that it goes on there and it stays pretty good. So you got that little piece going like this. And you have a little bit of a steel peg hanging out at the side. That's very important. So the next step is you need magnets. Now, you want N52 magnets. They have N50s and then they have 40s. I think they have 60s. I think the higher the number is, the stronger the magnet. You don't need like anything beyond N52 magnets because they're just too strong. I find that the N52s are the perfect ones. sometimes some of these factories use like maybe 50s or 40s, and you know when you put the magnets there, it feels very weak. The 52s are perfect. They're like rare earth magnets. You get these on eBay, order them from China. I always buy them in bulk. I get all different sizes. You know, you go 3 millimeters, 2 millimeters. You get all different stuff, and you know it's really good for your kit building because you never know if you need a smaller magnet or bigger magnet. And sometimes, you know, you need a smaller magnet for this piece, but then in this piece that's connecting, it could be a bigger magnet. You know, so you just be kind of, you know, think about that when you build kits. So with this one, I don't really have to worry about the size of the magnet because it's going to be going into the base. So I'm going to be using a little bit bigger one for it. So this one right here, I'm probably going to use this one, just a little bit stronger. So whenever you have your magnets too, don't try and pull it, slide it off. That's kind of like the trick of magnets, you kind of slide it off. I try to put everything in paper bags to separate them because if you have them all in one big chunk, it's even harder. They do come... you can order some that come in like the plastic tubes, but they're a little bit more expensive. Try to order them off of eBay. You'll get more bang for your buck, or Amazon, whichever you prefer. And then basically, you know, you can kind of put the magnet on there and it sits. So we're going to put Aves around this, right? And we're going to let that cure up for the night. And then what happens is the next day you pop this off and then you have your magnet system. And this is what I do for all my magnets and how I do stuff. I know it's extra steps. Some people would rather just kind of glue in a magnet into the key and be done. I like to have the rods and everything to make sure everything's secured. So we're going to put, if you feel you needed more magnets here, you can do that too. Like say, you don't want to use up all these magnets, but say you got some trash magnets. This is something that I came across from my brother. He kind of was going to throw these away, so I took them. So these are like just like fun magnets, you know, that you can use to kind of mess around with. So if you want to give some extra like power to your magnet without using up all these, and you have something that's like a throwaway, you could take something like these and you could throw it on there, and then you can have like a little bit extra pop to your magnets. You know what I'm saying? So if you wanted to do a little bit more, sometimes I do that with certain items like smaller magnets. So like say I'm using like these magnets over here, like these smaller ones, I'll pop a couple of these on there instead of burning these good ones I got from you know, eBay. I can use up this stuff here. These are a little bit strong. I don't think these are 52, but they kind of help with a little bit more of a power to it. So it's something to think about if you have these. Or like say you're ever like at a dollar store, or you're at like a, you know, a flea market, and you see somebody that has like these magnet type things and they're kind of just throwing them away or selling them cheap, or at a garage sale. You use them for your statues. You can use them. It's really good stuff. So that's one little thing I have that's sitting there that I'm kind of using. So the next step is I'm going to mix up some Aves real quick, and we're going to put Aves around this and we let it sit up for the night. And then the next day what we do is we're going to try to set her into the base with this, and it should work out pretty well. Now you don't need to use a magnet when setting something into a base. I'm going that extra step only because I want to, and it's kind of showing you guys what's going on. I'm taking that little extra step. But anything that kind of sits into a base, like a character that's standing, you know, with 2 feet or whatever, you really don't need the magnet system unless you feel that it's wobbly or you want to just be on the safe side. I'm just doing it with this one because I feel just down the line, whoever owns the item, once we, you know, put her up for sale, if they ever kind of lift her up with the chair and they're not paying attention, and the magnet kind of will help it. It's just kind of a little of a safety precaution because of the way she's sitting on the thing. You know, you never know if, say, somebody ends up with her and then they sell it down the line and somebody else gets it down the line. They don't really know, and they go to lift it up or they kind of do something and they're not paying attention, and she's still sitting in a chair. Without the magnet, might help it like fall out easier. So it's just a little bit of an extra step. Anyway, so let me go ahead and mix up Aves. We'll kind of put this around and we'll just let it cure up for tonight. So I got my Aves mixed up. I put a little extra magnet there. I figured, what the hell? Let's give it a little bit extra pop. As I don't want to... I guess if she was a little bit more wobbly and she could fall out of the chair easier without having this magnet and rod system, I would stack up a couple magnets. But this is good enough for now. So just take your Aves. This doesn't really need, like I said, doesn't need to be... it could be this wide, you know. Like sometimes when you put stuff into like an arm and leg, you gotta have a smaller magnet, but with this one it should be fine. So basically all I'm doing is kind of just squeezing this around here, like so. trying to make sure there's no air pockets. And then kind of come around the edge. Then lock this piece into place, like so. And that's pretty much it. So you let this cure up for the night, and then the next day we can get this situated into the chair. Now, the reason why I always tell people it's better to do the square magnets, and like I said before, you don't want things twisted. The round rods and stuff work okay for specific items, but a majority of the time you want the square, because even though she's going into the chair and you know, it's kind of keyed for her and positioned for her, what'll happen though, sometimes if it's a round one it can still twist. So always go with the square stuff. And then also kind of make sure that this is kind of... What I'm trying not to do too is get any of the A's locked into the key. I'm making sure there's a little bit of a gap there. I don't know how well you can see it. So make sure there's a little bit of a gap. And that should be good enough for now. So let this cure up. If you think you are hitting a gap, get yourself a tool. Now don't forget, we did use a magnet, so if you're using a steel tool, it will grab. So one thing too now is, if you put this on your table and you have a tool, what will happen is the magnet's going to snap to this tool or any other magnet. So wherever you put this to cure up for the night, make sure you put it away from any other metals, because what it'll do is it'll grab, it'll twist it, rip it, or whatever, and you don't want to do all that. So anyway, I'll put this on the floor now, let this cure up for the night, and then we'll start working on this, the next step, getting her into the base, and then see if there's anything else we need to do. One thing though I am noticing, the gap between her legs, I like it, but it's still a little bit too thin. I think I might fill it in a little bit more. Since I got some of this A's, I'm thinking I might do it now. The only problem is I just put that on there, so it's a little tricky, so I probably won't. But I think, just thinking out loud in myself, I think having that gap there will cause more problems with the skirt and paint, especially when I put the skirt around here. So I'm thinking we might have to kind of make it look like the thighs are kind of squishing together. But I still needed to do all this anyway because I didn't like the way it was set up. So I'll think about that a little bit more, but let's let this cure up for the night. Next day, and we can see that this comes off pretty well. You see how that clicks? That means the magnet in itself is going to hold it. Now, like I said, it's not super strong, but it's good enough for what we're doing. Now, normally what I would do is, if we're doing this into like an arm or something, what I would do is I would use my ice gel. These things are absolutely amazing. Get this glue. I've done over this plenty of times. And what I would probably do is put the glue in there a little bit first, and then I would get this locked into place, and then I would put A's around it. But since she's going to be laying down, I don't really need to do the glue because it's kind of early in the morning today, and I'm not really going to be working on this for the rest of the day. So I'm going to mix up some A's. I'm going to put it in here, and we're going to squeeze it down. We're going to make sure that we don't over A's where it kind of comes up to the booty and it locks the booty in place, but we're not going to put under A's where it only kind of connects to the bottom. We want to try to get the A's to like right about like there or so. And then what I'll do is, she goes in pretty well, everything's good. I'm going to get her arm, I'm going to use some masking tape, and I'm going to kind of pull her body back a little bit, because you see how she kind of like goes forward. I'm going to pull it back a little bit, make sure she's lined up. I'm going to leave it alone for the whole day and the next night. So this way by tomorrow, I should be able just to lift her up pretty good. Now, if there is any kind of an issue too, which I doubt it, I don't think she's going to lift this way and scrape her legs, or lift this way. If all goes well, she should be able to lift straight up without any scraping. So that's the hope for where we're at with this. But I just want to kind of get this rolling and get this situated. So I'm going to mix up some more A's. I'm going to try to mix up enough where, it, like I said, I got enough that goes in there. The goal is we're going to get this locked in first, and then we're going to work on the key after this cures up. And we'll kind of go over that. Because if you try to get all the A's in here and lock it into place, what's going to happen is this could be pushed down. So if you're accidentally hit it here, when you go to put it back in and A's this off, it's going to push this down, and it's only going to be like that far. I'm not really worried about this key yet. We'll worry about that later. We want to get this locked in first. A little step by step. So let me get some A's mixed up, and then we're going to try to get this situated for today. Alright, got our A's mixed up, and the goal is, like I said, we don't want to mix up too much, but we don't want to mix up enough. So I kind of started low here first. We want to get this kind of pushed into the bottom. Then we'll put a little bit more in here. I'm hoping that I mix just the right amount. So before I put the rest of it in here, let's just do a test just to make sure. So basically, like I said, we just put this in here first, see how much it squeezes down, get her in there where she's supposed to do, and then we pop it out. Now sometimes when you pop it out, I might pull out all the A's with the key. Sometimes the key will stay in there. Sometimes it'll be mix or match. So it's kind of... Alright, so it stayed in there pretty well, but you see what happened is it did squeeze up around it. See how it kind of did that? So that tells me that there's a little too much in here. So what I'm going to do is pop this back out here. Let's see how we're looking. This is, yeah, so it's a little too much. So I'm going to pull this back out here. I gotta be careful too. You don't want to like break this. Alright, so let's also make sure we also put it back on the right way that it was. It clicks. And so we need to pull out this. So it's squeezed up a lot in front. So let's grab our solvent. Let's push this down here. I'd rather it not squeeze all the way up than squeeze up too much. So we're going to put some around the edging like that. And that should be pretty good. That should be where we're at. So let's grab her arm, wherever I put it. Be careful of this arm. Put this like so. I'm going to take a tape, put it on my desk next to me because it's always easier to have a couple strips next to me just in case. So the idea is we do this again. Just double checking, making sure. Just pull back. And basically we're going to take the masking tape. Doesn't need to be like, you don't have to sit there and make it like, you know, super tight and put tons of it on. You just want to make sure there's enough going around. And sort of connecting the tape. Because sometimes the tape might not stick to the primer too well. Whatever tape you got. I usually use masking tape for this because the blue tape gets kind of expensive. And that's pretty much it. We're going to let this kind of sit for the night. You know, the day and night. And then tomorrow she should be able to pop up. And then what we'll do is we'll start working on the key around the metal, you know, into there with some baby powder. We'll get that situated. And she should be pretty much ready to go with a little bit more tweaking here and there. And I think we can start focusing on the main body. But like I said, I still want to work in between the legs and get that cleaned up. So a little bit more to go, a little bit more prep work, but we're kind of getting there. So all in all, I'm pretty happy with where we're at so far. So we're going to get this key all set up. So it's the next day. You can see it kind of cured up in there pretty well. Let's get a little bit closer so you guys can get an idea. It locks in pretty well when you do this. Like I said, you could use the glue, you could do whatever, but we got a little bit extra A's and we have some baby powder. Now this baby powder, you could go over to CVS. You can get baby powder wherever you really want. I get this stuff that is the free, phthalate free or whatever it is, and I also try to get mild gentle formula, only because I don't know if you guys have ever seen like the really pungent scented baby powders. Those kind of bother the hell out of me because they're so potent. So I try to stay away from those when I do this stuff. It doesn't, I mean, if you like it, it's fine. You know, it doesn't matter if you like it. I just try to get this because it seems to work better. Also because I haven't had any kind of like reactions with this stuff. Because, you know, when you use the smoothing solution, and anything else. Sometimes stuff could sort of like react, or it could cause some kind of, not fumes, but it could just be like kind of just annoying, I guess you could say. So what we're trying to do here is just kind of create a little bit of a key area here. Now when you put baby powder in here, the problem is you'll pack up the magnet, and then when you put the metal rod in there, you'll have like a pack of baby powder from the metal rod to the magnet, and it's not going to touch. So what I usually like to do, and I'm going to go do this off camera, and we're going to kind of speed this up because I got to kind of do this back and forth going in and out of the garage. We're like in the middle of this crazy snowstorm right now too, so I can't really kind of bring in the garage and everything. So I'm just going to put some baby powder in here like this, right? Just kind of get it in there. And then what I usually do is I use my shop vac and I turn it upside down, get it out there. So what I'm trying to do is just get like a layer of baby powder in there. Because if you try to put this in there right now, what will happen is you'll pack in that baby powder and you won't touch the magnet. So I'm going to go in the garage, get this out of there, and then we're going to kind of like go back and forth. So it's kind of hard and it's kind of tricky because, like, you know, the way I do this is like it's back and forth. And if I'm in the garage doing it like on a nice spring summer day, it'll be easier. But with the cold, I just don't want to be in there. So let me just go get this and we'll come back. Alright, so this is always a kind of a pain. Sometimes it works out pretty well. I also want to try not to get any eaves on the rod and squeeze it down into the magnet. So I want to double check. Yeah, see, so what's happening is when you push it in there, it starts to pack down. So if you got yourself a little couple brushes, you could kind of get in there. And so I'm going to do this on the table just because it's a little cold. And then also too, go onto your piece there and wipe that off. But like I said, be careful though when you do something like this, because you can accidentally push eaves into there, and that might happen. Okay, so we'll probably push some in, and then we got some powder in here. Alright, so in this spot, it seems that we have like a little bit more flow around here for stuff. So grab a brush, kind of wipe down some of this baby powder, because if you try to put baby powder with eaves and you don't get like this solvent back on there, it's not going to work correctly. So I want to try to build this key as best as I can. Okay, let's see how this works. Not a fan of doing it with the solvent there, but kind of. You know, it's a weird angle too. That's another problem. It's a very weird angle, but we're definitely. What I also have is a I have a one of those the tool in the garage where I can kind of blow it out and get that like baby powder out of there. Get in. Alright, so I'm gonna have to do the rest of this off camera now. I might have to go in the garage and sort of kind of work this key, but you can see we're slowly building up the key now in there. And what happens is when you do get some baby powder and you push eaves down, it doesn't like to sit too well. But what's going on is, like I said, I'm getting stuff in there, and I got to get in there and get that out of there. So I'm going to go ahead and get another round of baby powder in here. This way you get some dust around this key. You know, kind of get a little bit dusty here, like so. And then I'm going to go in there, use the shop vac, get it blown out and everything. And then hopefully when I come back, it's all done. Okay, almost done with the prep video. So I just kind of want to go over what I did. So I went ahead and I sanded down the key. I just wanted to get this area in here sort of cleaned up, as you can see. So I sanded this area down a little bit. It doesn't matter that it's not perfect. We won't see much. I went ahead and sanded it down here. We have some marks we'll go over in a second. And I cleaned up in here. I got a little bit more cleaning to do. But that's kind of like just prepping before the next video. So what I'm doing is I kind of still want to plan in my head. I already took some pictures of what's going to happen. But the idea is we're going to put a piece of metal here, and then the skirt is going to go around, and then you're going to be able to see a little bit of the no-no spot on her. I think that's going to be a fun play. So the idea is the skirt is going to come across like this, right? And it's going to come down about there. So this gives me enough room to get in there and paint, as you can see. But what's going to happen is the skirt is going to go downward. It's going to be tight here with the metal rod, but it's going to go down in an angle. So this way the corset, it's kind of bunched there. And then what's going to happen is I'm going to do wrinkles from that point. So it's going to look like this corset is kind of stopping the skirt from coming upwards, but it's tight like that. So that's kind of what we're going to see in the front, sort of. And I think that's going to be a really good way of like looking at her. 'Cause she's got a mini skirt basically, you know. So if you're sitting like this, it's going to happen. And then the reason why I did the booty underneath, so you can see, we're going to have the sort of the skirt kind of come in that direction, so you'll be able to see some of that no-no spot underneath there, you know, the way she's sitting. So I think that's going to be a nice fun play on it. And then there will be some wrinkles over here because I made these line marks, as you can see, with the blue lines. So I have a blue pencil, lead on my mechanical pencil, which is great for making marks on this resin. So this way you don't get all that regular pencil lead all over the place. So the blue stuff works great, especially on Duplicolor filler primer. When that's dry, this pencil goes on it pretty well, and you can see. So that's basically where the marking's going to be. And then you can see I kind of made all the markings of the skirt underneath here. It's just kind of prepping of like how I want to, you know, it's a mini skirt. So when you're sitting down, you're going to see that, I guess you can say. So that's kind of where the skirt's going to go. So that's kind of the plan. The next step is, before we close out this prep video, is I want to prep the base for everything. Because I think what's going to happen is, the next step is we're going to work on the figure. We're going to work on the skirt, and we're going to work on the jacket. That'll be the next video. So this way, when we work on the chair video, she'll be ready to go, where if I have to work the cushion up here, and if I have to work anything underneath here, it's better to have the figure done, because if I place eaves on her, you know, on the chair, this item is already ready to go. But what I want to do before we close out this video, and I think I just got to kind of see if I have the nails for it. So what I want to do is, you see how this foot is, and I said this in the beginning of the video, I don't like how this foot is cut off like that. It should be like this, because if it's going to be touching the ground, it would have been touching the very tip. So I want her to be sort of lifted off the chair. You know, I don't want her foot touching at all. I'd rather have it up higher, so it looks like the chair is a little bit higher, and she's kind of like sitting up there, and she's not quite, you know, touching the ground. So my idea is, I'm going to see if I have nails in the garage. If I don't, I could go over to Home Depot. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to Dremel a hole in these pieces. And I'm going to put, whatchamacallit, A's in there. And then what I'll do is I'll put her on the chair. And then I'll tape my level underneath of this. And I'll do it over on the other table, which is more level. And I'll put the 4 nails on there. And I'll kind of put them down and kind of go slow. And then I figure when it's a good point, I'll stop and pick it up and let it cure. And then after that, I could put eaves around those nails after it cures in there. And then you have a piece of metal at the bottom of it. And I'll be putting felt pads too at the bottom. But it'd be better to have like pieces of metal there than the eaves. Because this stuff could start like, you know, resin and eaves could start cracking on me. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about doing. It sounds weird, but I think it'll work out better that way. Because I thought about just gluing a piece of, like, you know, resin that I have in there that's kind of like already cut up, but it won't work. I want metal down there just to be on the safe side. So I think that's what I'm going to do. It's probably the better option. Yeah, so we're gonna do that. I just got to go and find nails. I don't think I have any that I'm going to want to use, but we'll come back once I go in there and Dremel it, and we'll see if we can line this up pretty well. Because as of right now, at least on this base, she kind of, it's not even level, you know? See how she's wobbling? It's not the base that's wobbling, it's this that's not even. So I want to even it all out best I can. So that's kind of the idea. So I think that's the last prep thing before we start working on the figure. I also will go over some primer too before I close out the video, and we'll primer up too. I just got to heat up the garage, and I'll show you guys like the Duplicolor filler primer. It's the best primer I've ever used. So we'll go with that, and then we should be kind of closing out the video. Okay, so I got my little setup here. It's not the best, but it's going to work. So I went ahead and I Dremeled holes. I did find some nails, so you can see it's just going to work out pretty well. So I'm just going to put the nail in there like so. Same thing with this one. I also realized that some of these legs are a little bit thinner and bigger than other ones, so I think the bottom of the legs, we're going to have a little fun. I think, you know, we could kind of do a little stylized to them or something, curls or something. I don't know. Kind of figure it out. So I don't really care how messy it is. So I'm going to have to do this off camera, though. That's the only problem, because I got to kind of get on the ground and sort of look at this and line it up and try to get it as best as possible. I don't think I'm going to be able to put her into the base, but this is kind of as flat area as I can get this piece, even though it's not perfect, but it's going to work out pretty well. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, get that situated for tonight, let this cure up for the day and get this over and done with, and then hopefully I could come back like tomorrow and just kind of lock these in place better with ease, and then go from there. I might be able to get her into the base, but I don't really think I need to. I think it's just as long as I kind of line this flat area up, I think I'll be pretty good. So next day, and we are good. So I'm going to go ahead and fill this in with some A's, just lock these in place, and then I can figure out how I'm going to shape them, whether I do some kind of curls or whether, I don't know, I haven't gotten that far. So anyway, we put it onto the thing, and it looks pretty good. It's all nice there. It's not wobbling. I'm pretty happy with it. And then putting her into the base. We have a lot of gap here for the foot, so you can see I put my finger on there. So once I fill that in, it'll look like it's almost touching, but it won't. So that is good. I'm pretty happy with that. So right now I'm kind of heating up the garage. I'm not going to really go crazy showing you guys and everything, because I've done it in plenty of videos. So this is Duplicolor Auto Primer Filler Primer. I love this primer. It's probably the best I've ever used, because it goes on really smooth, it bonds pretty well, and it dries fairly fast. A lot of my other primers that I have used in the past, they either become very tacky, or they're rubbery, or it takes way too long for them to dry. I'm not a fan of the hobby primers that you can get for like Tamiya or any of those or stuff, because I feel that those primers, even though they're good, you don't get more bang for your buck when this kind of works good. This also helps fill in a lot of the scratches, because I do custom work a lot, and anytime you use sandpapers and stuff, it gets kind of scratchy, and this helps fill a lot of that stuff in. You can wet sand this, and you can dry sand this. So one of the things is if you have a lot of pinholes in an item, this is good for like doing like a dry sand, and kind of get that dust filling in those pinholes, and then you hit it with another color, another thing of primer, and it helps kind of really like fill in that stuff without sitting there with putty for ages. So you got to get used to it. I know a lot of people maybe in certain countries or states and stuff can't get this stuff, but if you can, it's great. They have red oxide and gray. I use the gray for customs because I use the pink Aves over it, and I can see what I'm doing. And I use the red oxide for whenever I build up kits that are already pretty much ready out of the box, like ownage stuff. So I just wanted to kind of close out the video with primer and stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and prime her up. I'm going to go ahead and kind of get her cleaned up. It's basically sandpapers. You know, if you have like 3M sandpapers, once it's dry, this is rougher sandpaper and this is finer, and I use this. And then there's also your regular paper sandpapers too and stuff. So typical stuff for hobby, you know, kind of using the sand everything up. So the goal is I'm going to get her all primed up today. I'm going to get her nice and clean and get her ready. And then next video we're going to come back and we're going to work on her items. So we're going to work on the jacket and the skirt. We're going to kind of focus on that. These might be longer videos than shorter videos because I'm just kind of rambling and just my train of thought as I go. And then after that, we're going to do a video on the chair. We're going to work on all the chair and everything. And then I think the final video is when we're going to, at least for the custom work, is do the hair. and then after that we'll do a video of paintwork and stuff. So we'll kind of keep it going, and I'll try to give you guys as much information. I also kind of explain everything that's going on, but I'm pretty happy with where we're at right now. So this should turn out pretty cool. So alright, so that is the end of this video. Thanks for dealing with my rambling and prepping and getting everything situated. And with that being said, we'll be back with the next video when we're going to focus on the body. Thanks for watching, and we'll be back.